Welcome to Self-Perfected.
Oh, nice.
We're recording.
And we're live.
Did you get that?
What's up,
Go,
everyone?
Christine. Christine does the intro now.
Go, Christine.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Self-Perfected podcast.
All right.
In
Hey.
my right, or actually left-hand corner, we have the Rad Dad.
Rad Dad, don't make you mad. Go take a bath. Feel glad.
Then we
Kinda switched it
have
up this time. Yeah.
Drake over here.
Nice.
Hey, what's up? Pastor Drake. What
And-
was it? What was it?
I can't remember.
Something
Get
with
ready
the...
to get pasteurized, no homo.
Okay, all right, yeah, that works.
It changed from last week. I thought it was like freaking the I don't know. Never mind.
Oh yeah. What was it?
Like leading the sheep in the streets or something like that, and a freak in the sheets.
Yeah,
Something
Leading the
like
sheep, freaking the sheep.
Freaking the
That's
sheets.
good.
I don't know. Yeah, sheep in the street. No. That's
Anyways,
that.
and
on
then
my screen right below me, we have a returning guest, Jess Snyder and Mitchell Snyder, and we're debuting the little baby,
He's
Aristotle.
already asleep.
Yes, he's already asleep.
that was fortunate. Well, I'm sure he was going to say a lot, but now he'll have to wait.
Just
I don't-
absorbing now.
I don't want to detract from the cuteness of Aristotle, but did you say debuting? Can we rewind that
Dave-
tape? I need everyone to go back to that and make a comment, a timestamp. Pretty sure you said debuting. But we'll let it slide.
You call out Cameron
You know what?
once, and then he's got to make a
Okay,
habit of it
Cameron,
every
I think-
single
Same thing.
podcast.
I think you're only gonna call people out every podcast to make up for your
Yes.
And
Stop
your
dramatizing.
dramatization.
Stop dramatizing things.
So
My
Jess,
brother-
Jess
I have
listens to. Oh, go ahead.
We're all
I'll say it.
I was gonna say I have a younger brother. He's like 2 years younger than me, and he would always say when he was very little, he would say blue jeans.
Oh, like
Jeans?
Yeah.
James.
And like,
Blue
and
jeans.
my parents, we would just make fun of him instead of like supporting him to understand like what it is. It's like when my kids, they say something incorrectly, I'm just like, what was that? Okay, it's actually this. And then like, okay, and then like they practice it or whatever.
Yeah.
So anyways,
Well, so I was gonna say Jess listens to every episode with Aristotle. So Jess, what's your take on the podcast as of recent?
it's been a
She's
while.
like our biggest critic.
I really enjoyed it actually, because recently there's been like an uptick in just like the free conversation where it's kind of just laughing and jokes and just kind of riffing off each other and going
I'm just
off
here
on
for the
little
jokes.
tangents, which is kind of fun. And then you also stay on topic at the same time and bring it back to what you're talking about. And so that's kind of my favorite because it's just like entertaining. And I'm literally sitting here laughing out loud, like for real. And sometimes I'll be listening and then you guys will say something funny and like I'll be either like feeding him or he'll be laying right next to me. And
And
I'll
he'll
all of
spit
a
breast
sudden
milk
like
out his
burst
nose.
out. I'll all of a sudden burst out laughing, and he's he's not really aware of what's going on, so
Right, you start crying,
like
yeah.
he's
Yeah.
like whoa. He's like what's going on. But it's good. He really enjoys listening to people talk, so it's been really great just putting it on every Sunday morning. And then I think to myself, I'm getting in those 30 million words that and if you don't know that reference, it's like the difference between an elite family and a poor family is typically 30 million words before a child's like 7 or whatever age.
I think
so
within 4 years, actually.
4 years?
Within
Yeah.
4 years. Yeah.
Wow.
Damn, we were doing the math. We got a double. I'm just kidding. We hit over.
And if you
it,
look
need-
at it,
we
the
need to talk
gap
about it.
between
I was like-
the gap between middle class and elite is 20.
Mhm.
Oh, 20 million. Okay.
So no,
'Cause
no,
I
no,
was-
no, but
I
I'm
was-
saying,
But
saying
that's just
from
between
low
middle
to
class.
high is 30, but from
Yeah.
middle to high is 20. So the
Wow.
gap is even bigger between middle and high than it is from low to middle.
Wait, say it
Yeah.
again.
The
What's low
gap,
to middle?
there's 3 classes, right? So the
Yeah.
30 is between low to high,
Yes.
but from low to middle is only 10.
Mm.
Wow.
So the middle is actually closer to the low.
The
That's
low.
why it's so easy for
Wow.
them to go that way instead of that way.
Yeah, because we were doing the math and we were trying to figure out how many words per minute I need to say to him or he needs to hear. And because I
I
was
just
like,
start shouting words around the house. And I'm like, fuck. I mean, yeah. I mean, no Aristotle. See, that's like 8 words right there.
because I'm like, I don't talk to him all day, every day. Like there's moments where he'll be like sleeping and I'm also sleeping. And so I'm like, I haven't developed the ability to talk in my sleep for him.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
he
But you
needs
guys
to
are
like,
also
play a
talking to each
recording.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And Katie like reads to the kids when they were babies. So I'm sure she's reading something right now. I don't know what, but actually she's reading Asimov,
Mhm.
and then she read to Max. I think she read Cryptonomicon,
Oh, nice.
and for Seneca she read Diamond Age. I mean, not only those things, but like, I mean, these are like very high level vocabulary, like novels, right?
Yeah.
So they got that exposure when they were babies.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm
for-
reading Future Proof to him right now. And then I have
Oh,
like
wow.
a stack of like this many books. Like they're just random books so that it's tons of different kinds of vocabulary from different ages of different topics. And I'll just like read a page or 2 in each of those. And then I also have a couple books we're listening to on audio. And then anytime I'm listening to like YouTube videos about whatever, like recently I've been into listening to stuff about optimizing how to keep your house and like cleaning and organizing and stuff like that. And so I'll just play those, you know, on speaker. And then also ones on fashion because
I mean, it's pretty obvious he's already fashionable. Look at that sweater. Well, the lighting's not very good.
No, but there's this, what's it called? The wardrobe something.
Capsule wardrobe.
The capsule wardrobe. And there's different things from that I'm wanting to incorporate in our wardrobe just because it's timeless and it's not as trendy. And
I like
after
the Techno Tutor shirt with the cool smiley.
okay. But I really want to capitalize on this because this is a cool topic to bring through. After listening to all these things about capsule wardrobes and whatnot and looking into like the trends and all this stuff, I'm realizing more and more how capitalistic our fashion has become here in the United States. Like all the graphic t-shirts, and then all the different colors of that graphic t-shirt, and then that t-shirt changes slightly and all this stuff. And you look at all the other countries in the world and nobody does graphic t-shirts like that. Like the ones that say eat, sleep, pray, or I don't know, like live, laugh, love, or I don't know, like there's those
Canada.
yeah. But like seriously, and I think about like European countries or, you know, anywhere else, and nobody really has those kind of like shitty quality, you know, they're maybe going to last a year or two, say something kind of weird, like very specific, very niche to a specific group. Otherwise, other countries just have plain shirts that everybody could wear because it's not just directed towards one certain market. And also we have t-shirts and stuff that revolve around all the different holidays. Like, think about that. All the different holidays, there's like hundreds of different designs of shirts in not that great a quality, like just all the different trends as well, because you go through trends so quickly with TikTok nowadays. It's insane. Like one famous TikToker's like, oh, this shirt, and it lasts for like a month. And then you have all the different varieties of like the very expensive level of that shirt and then the knockoffs of that shirt, right? So
I would say like in China specifically, they do have like a lot of cheap material type shirts. That's where most of the shirts are made, but they usually get shipped here because they sell better here. And then also I think in like Western Europe, like those more developed countries, they do have something similar as far as like the graphic tees or like just shit that you just end up throwing away. But what's really interesting is a lot of our throwaway clothes end up going to like what we call underdeveloped or third world countries. Like they end up going there and then they'll wear like whatever seems like really popular here, like those eat, pray, love or whatever type shirts, they'll wear those. And I just know, I only know about this because like uh I know someone who has a vintage clothing store, and
Mm.
when they get their vintage clothes, they literally get them by the like shipping container full. Like and
Whoa.
yeah. And then like they'll go through all of those clothes, and sorting through something like that, you might end up with 100 or maybe 200 pieces out of the, thousands of pounds of clothes. You might end up with 100 or 200 pieces of clothes that here would be still determined as like, oh yeah, that's vintage, that's cool. And then the rest is like, okay, now give this all away to poor people. Like, we don't want this. Nobody's going to wear it here. And what's interesting is those folks would not look at the vintage clothes and be like, oh yeah, this is really great. They'll look at just, oh, this says on it Old Navy. I'm going to wear this one. It's Old Navy. Like, that's what they gravitate towards. And so they'll get the stuff that, we would consider like, that's trash. That's just old clothes. And nobody's going to wear that. Whereas I guess the point that I'm making is that what we perceive as valuable has so much to do with the way that we're influenced, and what they perceive as valuable has so much to do with the way they're influenced, but they're not
Totally.
impulsed with like the same sort of elite type of branding, where it's like, oh, you got this, I don't know, Yves Saint Laurent from like the 70s or something like that, or 80s, I don't know, something like that, right? Like, where for us here, even we would be looking at it and just go like, nice shirt. But for them, that would be like, to them, that would be, oh, that's just an old shirt, because there's no, I guess.
Yeah, it's like symbolic value. It's not real.
Right.
Hey, I can solve the problem very easily. And here's, and I'm thinking out, we could have different colors, but no, I think we should just stick with one color. And this should be the uniform for the future, right?
Oh, somebody.
I'm into
I
it.
actually
Honest-
look good in one of those.
Honestly, I used to go to a Catholic school where we had a uniform, and it was like the easiest 4 years of my life to dress. Like, you literally just
Yeah.
wore the same thing every single fucking day.
Don't
I
have
had
to worry
the
about it.
the least amount of laundry. Like, it was awesome. Mind you, it was funny though, because like I never developed any really sense of style in that time, as opposed to like some other people who went to like a high school that didn't have uniforms. But it's interesting that you're bringing this up, Jess, because fast fashion has become so huge, especially in the last, like, I don't know, 5 to 10 years, because of the apps. Like, I have a couple of apps where it's like, literally on my phone, I have this like huge shopping catalog, and like, it's just so easy to like sort through so much clothes. And it's funny because like you can see that a lot of it is really shitty. Like, it's super trashy. Like, it's made in like, obviously, like warehouses in China or wherever, right? And it's like, and a lot of them are even being called out for like child slavery as well.
Yeah.
But it's just fascinating because it has been, it was an issue before, where like the fast fashion stuff, when you had them in malls and like you saw like certain stores where it was like, obviously this is really shitty quality, but now it's like there's a huge like exponential growth in fast fashion because it's so easy to just like set up a shop on an app
Totally.
and just sell clothes now, right? Anyway, so it's just funny because like, I mean, I'm guilty of it. Like, I buy some of that stuff and then I get it and I'm like, well, this is shitty, but you don't really care because you're like, it was only $8,
Yeah.
So
That
And the other thing I think about is like, if the United States wasn't so capitalistic and like Hollywood, and just this whole stride to be like the famous people, you wonder how much that really influences the other countries of the world, because when I was in China, a lot of those people there are influenced by the American society, because I went to like the clothing stores there and they had a bunch of clothes that had English wording on it, but it didn't even fucking make sense. It was just like these like stuff that did not.
Wait, Jess, are you telling me you've never worn anything with like Chinese characters on it that you had no idea what they were? Because
Actually, I probably haven't actually.
really.
That's funny that you said
You know,
that.
like the fortune cookies, how it'll have the fortune on the front, and then it'll sometimes have like the Chinese on it, also in the back or
Yeah.
whatever. And it probably says like, "You stupid fucking idiot." You,
Yeah.
dumbass. You
Or it
actually
says
believe
like
this shit.
all hail Xi Jinping. Or how do you say
Yeah.
his name?
It's like you just
Yeah.
ate fucking rat poison, you dumbass.
I just watched the guy. I watched well, not just. This is a long while ago, but I watched the guy who tattooed on himself. Like it was
Oh,
something
no.
like General Tso's chicken. Like he had that tattooed on himself, and then he walked around Chinatown. But he was doing it as like a stunt because he spoke Chinese, and so he was doing it as a stunt. So he would walk around Chinatown, and like people would be like, they would look at him, and they'd be like, you could hear them off camera be like, this guy fucking General Tso's chicken is yeah. But hey, you know you have General Tso chicken on your arm. Oh, where you get that tattoo?
Okay, but if somebody here in the States in English wrote like Chick-fil-A on a tattoo, people would be like, "Oh, that's cool." I'm just an example, right?
That's
Like
true.
they
That's
wouldn't.
true.
That wouldn't actually seem weird from the
That's
perspective
true.
of you're just putting your. It's like a bumper sticker.
I
you know
mean,
what I
people were getting tattoos of the fucking COVID vaccine, like the COVID, like the COVID. You know how you
No,
got
I
like
think
a
that
little
was just
card.
Pfizer.
a reaction they were having.
Dude, that's crazy. Like
That's just a reaction.
them
That's just a-
now, if they actually
actually
were
a-
paying attention, realizing
actually a
that that's been
rash.
killing so many people and causing so much backlash, and you just put it on yourself, like,
you know,
Kind
who-
of like having a
okay, Hitler.
Right. It's like get a swastika. Why not?
you know who had a really
literally.
good video on it. Russell Brand just had a great video. Like it was hilarious where he's talking about Pfizer, how much like they've had a record year in profits, and they're still like redacting literally entire pages. And it was just so funny the way that like he had presented the information. It was just like, oh, when have you ever like, oh, okay, so like they just redacted everything. It's okay. We didn't pay for it. Oh, no, wait. Actually, it did come from our tax money. Oh, wait a minute. When was the last time that you bought something and then you're like, hey, what were the ingredients in that? Oh, we can't tell them this one or that one. You know what? Just take this and you get what you get and,
You
and
have
enjoy
to put
it.
the ingredients in the fucking food that you buy.
Right? It's hilarious because what Jess is saying exactly, like, okay, people are still like, oh no, but COVID was so serious and we had to do this way. And the reality is like, no, we were talking about this at the outset of this happening. And a lot of people were suppressed for bringing it up, and you were looked at as crazy or called names or whatever. And so it's like a serious gaslighting. I hear a lot of people like to use that word, especially Teal Swan. She loves that word. She feels like she's being gaslighted all day long.
I bet
Your
she
family
does.
members gaslight you.
She
Like-
loves to talk about narcissists as well.
She's interested in them. She's interested.
I bet her anger, her silence is what you have to fear.
That's it. That's
It's not her
it.
words. It's her silence that you
It's her silence. That's when you should run. But it's so funny because now they have them for like how you write the letter Y. How you write the letter Y, and it has this. Remember those Facebook posts that you were showing us? There's
I
one
was like
now
trying to remember
for-
what you were. I was trying to understand what you're talking about.
Yeah. So how you write the letter Y, and it has the exact same text. The exact same text. Nothing has changed. It's literally like when so and
What
so
it reveals about you. Yeah.
Yes, like
Because they know men are not
so
doing those
kind
quizzes.
and loving. Well, I've actually seen some men do them. They were gay in their defense, so but
In their defense.
in their defense, they were feminine, is what I'm trying to say. So
Right.
not only okay. Anyway.
I've seen some pretty masculine gay dudes.
Yeah. Okay.
Seriously.
That I've seen that as well. I have.
But they weren't doing those quizzes.
They were playing baseball, okay, and football. I mean, I was showing Christine the other day how the quarterback holds his hands behind the center, and she was like, this isn't gay. Are you sure? Like, are you sure they're not
Oh no,
all gay? All the
is.
quarterbacks and centers.
I'm honestly not too familiar with football. Like it's not that big a deal in Canada. So I have no idea, but all I've like when I hear people like, let's say like, oh, Benjamin talk about it, they're like, it's like the gayest sport ever. Well, when Drake described it to me, I was like, well, no kidding. You're literally touching people's balls
Yeah,
all the
pretty much.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Like,
you don't
true.
know what goes down in those locker rooms either. Come on now.
It's true.
Guys get weird in locker rooms. I've heard some stories.
True.
And now that you
It's
have like
true.
the trans people in there too, it's just getting weirder.
I don't know about that. I don't know
Yeah,
about the
but
trans
that's
people
in
playing
girls'
football.
locker rooms.
Probably in
Oh,
both.
The thing is,
in the locker
guys
rooms,
are
I
not
got
going to
you.
care if a woman becomes a man and then wants to be in a men's locker room. Guys will not care.
Yes.
It's
It's-
usually the other way.
The other way, that's the problem. It's actually a problem, right? Like women
Yeah.
should have that point. I'm all for women's rights. Just the rights that make sense. I'm not talking about voting and stuff like that. I'm saying like, you know, they should have the right to have their own spaces and so forth, like away from the men so we can fucking talk.
Yeah. Okay. I was wondering where you're going with that. Like such a controversial take. Like all for women's rights. Like who? I don't want to touch that. It's funny because like we're bringing up this point of capitalism. Jess, did you have a chance to watch that video that Cam sent this morning of that woman talking about like networks? And it was like a video from 5 years ago where she's talking about like the financial networks in this world and how they actually operate. And it
I
was-
did not have a chance to watch that.
okay, I'll give you the brief synopsis.
I mean,
But-
guys, I sent it a whole hour ago. Come on. Like, what do you guys, do you have something else better to do than watch these random videos I send you?
But it was really great because in that video she talks about like the financial institutions and banking and all that and how we tend to think of these networks as some sort of abstract out there, that's this system, that's how it works or whatever, but it's really governed by people. Like the network is actually the individuals who are in these positions who have connections, who have these different relationships, and then they can use those relationships, and that's what makes them valuable. That's what makes the bank valuable, because they have these people who are connected with all these other people, and then the bank will then get connected to the political networks. And so it's literally a specific person who's connecting with another specific person who's able to reach out to a lot of people. And then they can use that to influence so many people in a specific way so that what they end up doing, and this was really clear, what they end up doing is skewing everything that they're influencing so that they can take more and more advantage of it, because everyone is self-interested, of course, right? And so they're going to take advantage of that as best they can, to the point where it skews so much they alienate the rest of the population, or they're just so, it's like, what happens as the consequence of focusing on your own self-interest? The obvious consequence is, if you continue doing that, you're separating yourself from the rest of life and what's best. And so what ends up happening is you see like this slow separation. At first, it seems like, no, I'm just doing what everyone else is doing. I'm doing like what is best for me. You know, as people say it, obviously it's not best for you if it's not best for all, right? But I'm doing like what is going to work for me and within my self-interest, and it's within the sphere of what everyone else is doing, so it's okay. But the obvious consequence, if you continue on that path, is you're doing only for you and fuck everybody else. And that's what we continuously see with the elite.
Yeah. So you
right?
see the systems moving towards more and more only favoring that and never including more and more and more. It's like the opposite. Do you see?
Yeah, but the
But
thing
people-
is, they
people
package it with
justify
a
it.
pretty bow. They package it with a very beautiful, enticing bow. Like,
Well, they use a lot of words people
Amazon?
don't understand.
well,
You
that,
know,
but
green,
Amazon,
this and that. Yeah, go.
customer first,
Right.
always.
Right. I know. I remember
Customer
hearing that. They're
first,
like, oh, we're very
always.
customer oriented, but they're just saying we're literally going to track everything you do and manipulate you
Right.
based on what we've discovered your preferences are, and making sure you can get stuff really quick and not have to think about it.
Right.
So you
Yeah.
can basically shop all day.
or
Right.
like
Just
on
exploiting
the
the dopamine.
or like
Right.
on the remember the Klaus Schwab stuff that we were looking at, how because he has multiple books now, and then that what was that chart we found online where you could zoom in on everything and it showed how everything was
I think it's the World
interconnected.
Economic
Remember that?
Forum. Yeah.
Yeah, it was on the
Yeah.
World Economic Forum, that network that they have. It was
Yeah.
literally their network.
Yeah, which is so fascinating because they'll use those buzzwords like equity and inclusion and all that shit. But it's like people nowadays are so blinded, not educated, that we think, oh, this is like just best for me is what I care about. But it's like if people could just see a bit further and realize that if you were actually like really self-interested and you wanted the very best life for yourself, it makes complete fucking sense to do what's best for all.
Yeah.
It's just that people don't see how that happens. But hey, isn't that self-perfected?
People don't think that it's possible to do what's best for all because they inherently believe that there will always be poor people, that there will always be poverty, like all this stuff, when that doesn't have to be the case.
Right.
Well,
But that's just
We live in an
vocabulary.
abundant world. There's enough for everyone. We just
Yeah.
haven't put the systems in place to incorporate that.
Another
Yeah.
cool point about this video was just like it was talking about how you end up being, or how a person ends up becoming a super hub, and that is everyone is connected as a node within this network of the world, right? But some people, well, most people are on the outside of this network, meaning they don't have many connections, right? But the more that you expand your network, the more you move towards the center of this entire network, and you become like a super hub, right? And so it's cool because it's like literally, okay, what do you have to do, or what do we have to do in order to have a greater influence? Is we have to expand our networks. We have to do that 1+1 and continuously keep growing until we're all in the center. And then that's what becomes the major influence of the world. Because yeah, go ahead.
Well, because that's where it's so fascinating. Like when people will look at destiny and self-forgiveness in this process, like sometimes then people think, oh, I just have to work on myself, then I just have to change myself enough and let go of my past and heal myself. But then they stay at their job at Walmart.
Just go
or
listen to Teal Swan if you want that.
Right.
And it's so
it's
funny.
like, yeah.
I was
Go ahead.
just gonna say, and it's funny because I remember like going to school, like going to university, and like people always saying, like, especially if you wanted to get into like med school or something, it was always like, it really depends on who you know. If you know someone in there, they can get you in no problem. And it just became this like thing that people started saying, because when you got to university, you're like, holy shit, this like institution is so overly saturated now. If everyone's doing this, how the fuck are we all going to get these jobs that our parents are promising us? So it really just depends on who you know. So it's like inherently or subconsciously, people do know that it depends on who you know. But then to actually like create that, it's like people just have no awareness or vocabulary to actually like build that network and actually, you know, and then obviously like now with the tools and TechnoTutor and the Self-Perfected, it's like very obvious. It's like, well, the only way we're going to have any sort of influence is if we build our network. So it's like back to what you were saying, Mitch. It's like, yeah, if you only focus on yourself, you're just, you know, keeping the system just the way that it is.
Yeah.
Like,
And here's how that network is being used right now. It's like there was another video that Kim had sent, and it was this doctor, and the doctor was basically he was saying, oh, okay, you know that crazy uncle that you have who's like, oh, they have the cure for cancer. It's like, you know, hidden away.
They're hiding
some
it in the basement. They don't know
Right.
anyone to find it. Yeah.
He's like, it's not exactly like that. Like he's on the right path. That uncle's on the right path. But what it really is they have the cure. Like, and he used a really great example. They have the cure for hepatitis C. They have the cure for hepatitis C, where they've created some medicine where
It actually was released. It came out. It was working. Yeah.
yeah, and it had a 90% effective rate, meaning like 90% of the people who took it, who had hepatitis C, they no longer had hepatitis C. And you
Not
would
even
think
just managing symptoms. They just didn't
Yeah.
have it. Yeah.
it was cured. And you would think like, oh, wow, that's amazing. We'd hear all about this in the news. We'd hear all about this like everywhere, and everybody would be celebrating. Like, look how far medicine has come. Look at how great medicine is. Like, wow, we're actually doing some great things, right? But you can see just how skewed the network has become, because literally Goldman Sachs said as a
Who
public
would be the
statement,
financer, right?
who is exactly, who was basically the way it works in
Because
pharmaceuticals.
you need capital to be able to
Right.
take this and branch it out and build it, and right.
Right. So even if you want to do the research to find the cure, you're going to need
No,
capital.
not
for
even that. You have the cure. Now you have to expand. So you need infrastructure. So you need capital funding and so forth. That's the idea of capitalism, right? And so they were applying for all that. And it was like, and they also had companies like, you take like a Goldman Sachs, they're managing funds or they've invested in these companies and they have some say over what's the direction that they're going to take that. So obviously you would think, okay, cool. They've got the cure. Let's put money into that. And then we'll get the cure out there, right?
Right. But instead, what they said was, yeah, a one-shot cure looks really enticing, from a certain perspective. That's really beautiful.
And it's good for the
Glad
public. It's good for the consumer. It's great for society, right? That's
glad you did it. Beautiful. But as far as somebody who's going to invest in your company,
as far as recurring revenue.
As far as recurring revenue, that's it. As far as recurring revenue, we would prefer something that you can manage symptoms with. That looks.
They're saying
much
managing
better.
symptoms is a much better business model when you're looking at recurring revenue. So that's how they were looking at the fucking.
So they basically said, "Fuck your cure. Fuck that. We are."
So it's
have
funny
no
because all the
interest."
people who are like, no, capitalism's great because it's the thing that can find cures and advances humanity. But the system they're supporting is the same point. That's like, okay, but we have to keep investing and making money from that. Otherwise, what's the point? People will justify that.
Right.
It's kind of like the point of why doctors have to be paid more than everybody else, because they need that return on their investment, because all the time they put into it and all the money for medical school and all of that. Why would they do it otherwise? You
Right.
could just be a janitor and make the money if you want to just make nothing, right? So it's like we're saying, well, these companies wouldn't create these drugs if they weren't super expensive and they could make a return on their investment and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, but then why, if that's the rules we're setting up and you were playing by those rules totally rationally just meaning not common sense, but just according to the logic that's set up, wouldn't you be like, well, we cannot find a cure. We cannot fund a cure, because then we literally, it's like, imagine I'm going to invest 100 million and I'm going to make 200 million on the cure. Sweet. But then what? Now I have to go find another cure. What if we can't find another cure for something else? What if I took that 100 million and every year I made 30 million for the next 100 years? Do the math.
Yeah. Well, you're
It's a
only
lot
making
more.
100 million. Yeah.
You're making more. No, wait, what?
If you're only making 30 million for the next 100 years.
Making
I thought you
$3 billion,
said-
right?
Sorry, yeah.
I was making sure.
I-
We gotta get Max in here. Help us with this 6-year-old
yeah,
now.
please.
But you know what I mean? Like the point is, but that's how investing works. You're like, okay, I have $100 million. I can just double it. Cool. It's like, or you can invest it. You don't have the money, but then every month or every year, whatever, you get money in return that overall you make a lot more, right?
Yeah.
So that's the logic that's set up. But then it's funny because you'll have people defend capitalism as, oh, it's going to create all these great things. And it's like literally everything we have is because of that. And then they'll say, well, no, it's the people that are doing it. They're corrupt and this and that. And that video was really cool because it was showing you there is no abstract capitalism. And then there's just corrupt people in it. The capitalism is the people. The system is, Bernard has a video. The system is the human. Doesn't mean we can't put systems into place and they can operate without our physical involvement, but who's determining the relationships and the rules in the system?
Right.
And is it based on what's best, or only is it based on what's best for that particular person? So you can switch out the people in the government, but it still only benefits the few. It doesn't benefit, and then that person will exploit it. There's a really great book we've talked about before. It was by this Greek guy. He was like the finance minister of Greece when they were going through their whole debt crisis. And it's called like the adults in the room or something. He wrote a book about it. And he was just showing how like, there's these people in these positions, they're there because they're willing to play the game according to those rules. Otherwise they would not be there. They can't go in there and change it on their own. So it's like, they're kind of all in the system and they have the self-interest point. So it's like you need a whole system change, a new agreement. It's like you can't just go in there and be like, you know what? I'm going to be a good capitalist. in a system where it's like, okay, but then I'm still just going to try to make something cheaper than you.
Right.
It's like, I'll just watch what you do. Okay, now I'll make it cheaper and everyone will go to me. That's
That's-
how the game is played.
That's what
Right?
Amazon
Look
did.
at that's exactly what Amazon did. All these e-commerce people are just teaching Amazon what works so they can be like, thank you.
Exactly.
Right. And they'll go to these
also-
people and be like, all right, you want to sell through Amazon? You need to give us now an extra 7% or 3% or whatever. And if you say no, that's okay. We just make it so you can't have a pay now. And our ad will be put above yours and it'll be 2 cents lower. And people will buy ours. And we know they will because we've already done the math on it because we're customer first, right?
Right.
People act like they, and I've been saying this a lot, like, okay, this is going to happen to everything.
Mhm.
People think, oh, well, I'll do like online advertising and YouTube ads and all this. And it's like, oh, here's another example. Have y'all been following what's going on with Kyrie Irving?
No, what's going on?
No? So, remember he stood up and he was like, I don't want to take the vaccine before, right? And they
Yeah.
kind of like
Mhm.
let him get away with it to a certain degree,
Yeah.
right? And by they, you know who I'm talking about. It's this group that runs the world,
Who shall not be named.
the white people. I know I'm allowed to say that, so that's why I said that.
You actually
uh,
just boosted in the algorithm right there, Cameron.
And so I was gonna make a joke about juice boxes, but we'll leave it at that. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so
Hey.
he's now he shared some documentary and it was about this African slave trade and how certain groups were the ones who owned the ships, right? And it had a certain similar flavor, let's say, to certain things, maybe a certain artist formerly known as Kanye West might have been saying recently and such and so forth, and as you do. And anyway, so he shared some documentary on Twitter and then like, the system like came against him. Boom, like you can't say that. it's
Nike dropped
anti-Semitic.
him.
Yeah, it's anti-Semitic, And then it was like he held on and then finally he like issued an apology and he's like being forced to donate $500,000 to the ADL and all these different points, right? And so, some people are like, oh, he caved, and it's like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, actually, I saw a really cool video. This guy was like, I think it was Umar Johnson. Have you ever heard of him? He's like a black, he's like a very
Yeah.
like pro-black, speaker guy, whatever.
Yeah.
But he was like, it was really interesting, his take. He was like, don't hang your head in shame, Kyrie, because he was like, no one was going to have your back in that industry on your team. The fact that you had to cave and give an apology, we understand because no one had your back anyways. You were fucked. So, hey,
Yeah.
at least you stood up to a degree and maybe that'll lead to other people standing up, right? Obviously it's all a bullshit solution, but it was kind of a cool point because it was like, he made this point of like, oh, okay. So remember the NFL, right? He was saying nobody had Colin Kaepernick's back. Right. And like some
Okay.
people were standing up and they kind of were, and it was like, and then not that I agree with those points, but it's just to show like the willingness of people to stand and put their necks out, and why also the protesting isn't going to work, because a few will do it, they'll get their heads chopped off and no one else will do it, right? But he was saying like, look at what happened in the NBA with the whole Black Lives Matter. He's like, they let you paint the courts with Black Lives Matter and put a thing on your jersey, right? Because like the Bucks wanted to like sit down for the anthem or whatever. It was some kind of thing. And he said Obama and Michael Jordan went and talked to what was his name? LeBron.
Uh-huh.
And they said, because they were going to protest like the playoffs or whatever, right? And he said, he said they told him just play basketball, right? And so LeBron was kind of like the leader who told everybody like, let's just do this and they'll let us put our name, like we could put freedom or Black Lives Matter on our jersey or something. And he was like, so Umar Johnson was like, this was what they allowed you to do, your owners.
Yeah.
Right. He was like, so they're not going to have your backs. They're not going to have Kyrie's back of him actually standing up against some point or saying something or whatever. Whether you agree with what he said or not, it's really irrelevant because it's like it was a really cool point. It was the first person I've seen that saw the same thing I saw, because no one else I had seen had made this point of, and I'm not saying they haven't, but I just didn't see it. It's like, but it was a documentary on Amazon
Oh.
that Kyrie Irving shared
Oh, wow.
on Amazon. It's still there as far as I know.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
So he's not allowed to share a documentary that's on Amazon because
Wow.
of some things in it, right? And so, but it was because he was making a particular statement and he has that position he's in and so forth. And Amazon just wants to make money. So until they get pressure, they're not going to probably put it down or whatever, or take it down or whatever the case is, right? And so it was just a really interesting point, because what it shows, you see it with Kanye West and you're seeing it with Kyrie Irving right now, is this idea of I'll become rich, I'll become famous, and then I'm going to use my platform. Can you see now? It doesn't work.
Right.
It's not.
So-
I'm not saying you can't get into a platform and utilize it, but you're not going to, I'm going to compromise and just work in the system exactly as is and not care about any principles whatsoever. And then I'm going to stand up, because everyone fucking says that. And most people don't actually follow through on it. But then even the ones who do, like Kanye West is like, I could literally just go live on an island the rest of my life. I don't have to do this. And now he's like fucking losing it, everything, right? And we'll see what happens, right? The same thing with Kyrie Irving. He had to. He could have just been like, you know what, fuck this. I'm not playing basketball anymore. But then what?
Right.
Who was going to have his back? And then what would happen? Then the banks would be like, yeah, okay, no more banking for you. You know, no more this, no more that, right? That's what would have happened next if he hadn't just acquiesced, because he had to. So
Right.
it's like one person's not going to change it. And thinking that you're just going to, I mean, it's like, imagine Kyrie Irving making a stand right now, right? But what has he been doing this whole time?
Playing basketball.
Right, which is what? Fucking distracting everybody from facing reality.
Right.
So it's like,
Yeah.
same with Kanye. What was he doing? Making money
Making music.
for music, which
Fashion.
whether you think it plays into the stereotypes and the this and the that doesn't matter, because he's still just making music that entertains people, that they can look up to. And then also the fashion point, which is totally like, it's just fashion. It's just like focusing on, I have to change my
consumerism.
clothes. It's just it's just consumerism. So I'm not judging them. It's just that's how they built their position. And now they want to question everything. But it's like, but if you had questioned everything from the beginning, you would never have got there. And now you're upset because of that point you were just making, Drake, which was the networks. So now
Yeah.
you're a hub and you're like, okay, now I don't want to do this based on self-interest anymore.
Right.
I want to
Oh.
actually try to change things, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
nope, you're out. Bye-bye.
Exactly.
somebody
And that was what this woman was saying. The author of this book was saying. She was saying like, oh, someone can be removed from their network by making like a grave faux pas or a mistake or whatever. Basically, like, and she was saying it's not based on necessarily like actual intelligence or anything like that, but like based on an emotional intelligence, based on like, hey, you did something you weren't supposed to do, like as in this relationship. Like, you know, when you go to, I don't know, Japan, like they bow and then you're supposed to bow like a certain depth, and it's all very like scientific with how much you're supposed to bow or whatever. And if you bow too much, it's like, oh, you fucked up. And then if you bow like not enough, it's like, oh, you disrespected, you know, the whole thing or whatever.
It's a lot
And
like
so-
etiquette, right? It's kind
It
of like,
is.
oh, you came over and you didn't really know proper etiquette, so we're not inviting you to the party anymore. You're not really in
Right.
the club. Like you're supposed to do this properly because everyone feels comfortable and it's just the rules and everything. And it's like you go into an elite circle and there's certain things that are done as etiquette. You don't say certain things, you do say certain things, right?
So-
and you don't push on certain points. And then like you look at that's like the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. Right. It's not based on principle. It's just based on these are the rules of the etiquette. And it's like, oh, another example was Jeff Bezos and that mistress point, right? If you go back and
Oh, yeah.
because he got divorced, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And people think on the outside, oh, see, he was cheating on his wife. She had a right to divorce him. And I'm not questioning that. It's just they had an open relationship from the beginning, which I'm not encouraging that. I'm just saying they had an open relationship. That wasn't why they got divorced, because part of the whole game is that, okay, like this is the way the game works in these elite circles. They all have mistresses. The women all have other dudes, but you don't talk about it. You do it in secret. That even though we know you're doing it in secret, you do it in secret. And that's the way you play the game. You don't expose it. You don't put that out there because that's an embarrassment, right? It's embarrassing the other person. And so instead what they do is they put it in secret. And so the way they can topple somebody or keep them in line is they expose it. So somebody hacked his phone. You think some kid hacked his phone? Like, dude, think about it. They run the cloud servers for the CIA.
They told him.
So
they
you
told
think
him-
he could get his phone hacked?
they said
what you're
how
saying?
his phone got hacked? They said how his phone got hacked. He was sent a text from one of the Saudi princes, like, and it was one of these like Trojan horses where you click the link, it brings you to some like broken link or whatever, but it's already dormant within your phone. It's like, okay, we've already collected all the information that we need and we can access it whenever we want.
Someone in that position isn't constantly monitoring how the security is in their phone and so forth. You know what I mean? So it's clearly that's like an intelligence operation. You see what I mean? And who runs the intelligence operations? It's not like the military doing it. It's like the same people that are all interconnected in all these points. They have their fingers and hands in all these different points. And so it's like, I don't know all the details in the background, but it's clearly a point where you did something you weren't supposed to do, or you weren't going along with something, or you made a decision on your own, or whatever the point is. So now we have to step in because you've done something that's not correct.
You know what's so interesting about that is we play out these elite systems in our own lives all the time. Like so Elon Musk, right? He seems to be somewhat of a humanitarian, like doing all these good things to help the world.
He does seem to be somewhat of a human. You're right. Just
there's
more so than Mark.
There's people, like ordinary people, who live their lives in a way where it's like they always donate to charity. They always, maybe they go on mission trips.
They own a Tesla, so they think that they're saving the environment.
They're like a microcosm of Elon Musk, like his pattern that he's playing out. And the same with like a Jeff Bezos, like he's like just ruthless. Well, there's tons of people like that are ordinary people who are just ruthless, and they only are really looking out for themselves. Well, that's how those companies work. They're only really looking out for themselves. And so it's so funny because all the ordinary people are saying how, oh, it's those companies that are messed up. It's how the systems are set up that they're always putting the responsibility outside themselves. When in reality, if you look at their lives, they're playing it out the exact same way that they are. And then, you know how the elite people, we've been talking about how they point out, oh, you went against how we do things, then we're going to boot you. Well, that's the same thing that the church does. That's the same thing that all small groups do, LGBTQ groups, like any kind of group where it's like they're revolving around a certain thing. But if you go against that, then you're going to get booted.
Consider this, Roman. That's the point where most people will then judge and stop. So they'll say, well, I'm going to create a group where we'll never kick anybody out for doing anything. That's not effective, is it?
Well, then what principles is it based on?
That's the point, is what is the person being removed for? Is it because, oh, you didn't fit into the self-interested system and play by these arbitrary rules? Or is it you didn't stand by the principles and you're doing things that aren't best? That's the point. You see, so it's not about judging the system, because the system is a system. Like you can't design a system otherwise. You can't have a group where anything goes. Right. It's like we can't be like, see, the church, they kick you out if you don't agree with them. It's like, well, no shit. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a church. Right?
Next thing strippers are walking into the church.
Right. Like... It's like, well, now they are doing drag shows and stuff, right? And people are like, I'm out of here. That's not what I was agreeing to by being a part of this, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So like with my house, like if somebody comes into my house and starts saying spiteful things to my kids, you're out. You see what I'm saying? But at the same time, if somebody comes in my house and starts like talking about Santa Claus and they trying to impulse my kids with that, you're out. So it's different principles that are guiding the point. Right. So I'm saying that because I don't want someone to go like, oh, well, you need to just be, because that's the other thing people will do is they'll be like, I don't want to be like the elite. It's the same thing you see in education. They'll be like, I don't want to be like schools. So I'm just not going to teach my kids anything because it's all about natural and just learning naturally. And it's like systems are not natural.
It's just the opposite polarity on that spectrum, really, because it's like, look at the spiritual community is such a good example of that, where they're like, oh, like, I don't care about money and everything's just about love, which is like so stupid, because it's like, well, now you're just not basing it on anything real. Like you're still participating in the same self-interested bullshit. It's like, now you're just you have some moral high ground because you don't care about money and all you are basing it is on some feeling that you want to give. And it's like, oh, if everyone just was like this, we wouldn't have any of the problems that we have.
It's
Which
like
is
when the it's like when
exact
the
same
left
point.
says, okay, sorry, go ahead, Joey.
Which is the exact same point as basing it on money. You're basing it on love, but you just don't have the money. So it's like, it's still the energy. The
Right.
whole reason why you base it on money is because of the energy and the ability of what money can do for you and how you're going to feel when you get it. And so you just shift it over because I don't have the money, but I do have the love, and I'm just gonna, ooh, doesn't this feel good? Yeah, we can do it right
They
now.
also don't even have the love.
That's true.
That's what I'm saying.
That's true. But they
It's
have,
like I saw
they're
this
still taking
video
advantage.
because things get recommended to you, and I just happened to see this one from Jamiroquai, and I think it's an old video, but they just uploaded this like 4K version, and I just saw it, and I know it sounds silly, but like Jamiroquai is actually pretty cool. He's white.
yeah.
Does everyone know that?
I didn't know that.
What would you
do
have
mean?
guessed?
What do you mean?
No, I mean, Drake, you don't
I
count.
don't know.
Oh,
I'm
I don't
talking about
even
someone that wouldn't know.
Jamiroquai.
Jamiroquai.
I don't
Do
even
you guys
know if
remember him
I-
like Virtual Insanity and all that?
they don't know those songs.
It was
You
like
don't
really
know-
popular when I was like in middle school or something, right? Maybe you don't know who he is, but you guys are also younger than me, so
No,
Drake
they
is
know.
more into.
You're dating yourself.
No, they know the songs. You're
I
just
mean,
saying
I'm just
the
so
wrong
handsome. How
ones.
could I resist?
Here we go. Jamiroquai. Here's a song that you guys would know.
He's like a white British dude. But
Mhm.
anyways, I always just assumed he was like this, but because he's like his music style is like kind of funk.
Oh, okay. I do know it.
I've assumed he was like not like a white British dude. Like I just didn't. I was like surprised when I found out. Anyways, but he's actually got pretty good music. But the reason I brought him up was one of his videos popped up and it was called Little L, and I was like, what does that mean? So I watched the video, and he was talking about with like some women or something. He loves them, and he said like something about the little L, right? And I was like, oh, like as in love, but with a little L, not like a big L. I'm assuming that's what he means. I didn't really like go further than that. But like that's when people talk about love, they act like it's this big L, but it's really just the little L. It's like it's just some temporary like feeling thing.
Like the Amazon Jeff Bezos mistress type little L. Am I understanding this right?
Yeah, right. Not like how they big L love their customers, right? As Jess was pointing out. But it's like versus like real love is like last night, for example, okay, I'll just give some context. Last night I was like really tired. I was really, really tired. I was going through like a lot of stuff yesterday, and I had all this stuff I was doing at the office, and I was like just kind of drained, right? And when I got home, I was with the kids and everything, and then it was like bedtime. I was just like so tired. And I was trying to like lay down and just let the kids like read, right? So Katie came in because she's with Caius. She comes in and she was like really patiently talking to them, like, hey, Cameron is really tired. I also have to be with Caius and I need to get sleep right now because this is usually the time when I sleep. And she was just really patiently telling them, like, can you guys sit in here in the bed with Cameron and just read? We'll give you some books. And then when it's time, just turn off your book lights when you're ready and fall asleep, right? And so after a while, Seneca fell asleep and Max was still awake. And he was like, Cameron, are you feeling better? Are you okay? And I was like, and I woke up and I was like, yeah, I'm okay, Max. And he was like, well, can you come with me into my bed? I want to lay in my bed now. And I was like, that's fine. I can do that. And I was like feeling a little bit more rested just because I had that sort of like quick nap kind of, thing. So I went in there and then we're laying in the bed and he was like, I want to snuggle. And I think that was why he wanted me to go in there because Seneca was like laying between us and there was no way he was going to be able to like snuggle up against me. So I was like, sure, I'll go lay in your bed with you, right? Until you fall asleep. So I went in there with him and we got all in the bed and everything. And he's laying there and he's like, did you have a good day today? And I was like, yeah, I did. He's like, I know you're tired. He's like, what were were you having like some stress? Like, were you having some challenges? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, what were they? Tell me, maybe I can help you solve them. Right. And then we kind of talked briefly about it and everything. And then he's laying there and he was like, I don't know how much I should really share, but like there was, y'all remember back when he was like maybe 3 years old, we still lived in Houston. And I actually I uploaded a video about it where we were talking about death and what it means.
Yeah.
Right. And so he's been talking about that a lot. Right. And he's been listening to Bernard. right? And we've been talking about it. And he was like, talking to me last night, and he was just like, because like he'll sometimes start feeling like uncomfortable, and he'll start feeling sad because, and he had this like a fear point that comes up because he's like, he's like, what's the likelihood of someone dying when they go to sleep? Right. So he didn't want to go to sleep because he's like, what if you die when you're asleep? Right. And I was explaining to him, it's not about likelihood. I'm saying it's obviously, if you look at statistically, it's a very low chance, right? He was like, I think it's like a 0.00000000005, right? Especially if you're young, right? And I was like, yes. I said, but let's not base it on, there's such a low chance, I don't have to be afraid now. But you're really just creating the opposite emotion of like a feeling of safety about it because it's a low chance. So I don't have to be afraid. I said, the problem with that is there's still a fear there.
Yeah.
Right. And I said to him, I said, my responsibility within it, Max, I think I made a mistake, or I did make a mistake when you were very little, when we were talking about death, because I was explaining to you, it means that you don't exist anymore. And I said, but the way I explained it, I didn't give you the full context. And my starting point was to not create a point where you are participating in illusions or ideas. I was like, these people we were talking to the other day and how they were imagining heaven and all this stuff, right? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, what do you think about that? He's like, it's just not real, right? And I said, but you see how they live their whole life in a way that doesn't make sense, with the expectation that when they die, it'll all be taken care of. And I don't want to create that illusion for you. I said, however, I created an unnecessary fear in you potentially, because when I say that you don't exist, that would create a fear. And I said, you do exist. You just don't exist in the same way you exist now. I don't want to tell you that as a point of hope where you now have to be like, oh, well, then I don't have to be afraid. You don't have to be afraid. I said, but let's not make it a fear based on a project, not a, it's like, how can I explain it? Don't be afraid because this makes you feel better.
Right.
That is not effective because the fear is still there. You're still not addressing the fear itself. Right. And so as we see, Jess, so as we talked about it, I was like, I said, you still exist. I said, you just not in the same form you're in now. I said, let's just look at a tree, for example. I said, when a tree dies, where does it go? He said, in the ground. And I said, does Adam still exist? He's like, well, yeah. And I was like, so what's gone? And I said, what is the part within you that is afraid of dying? And he was like thinking about it, and he was like, my mind. And I'm like, right. It's the mind that is afraid. And I said, that would also explain why when you're going to sleep, the fear comes up about death, because it's the mind kind of shutting down to a certain degree. And that's kind of like it's dying. So there's a connection there. And I said, you have to within yourself get to the point where you stop participating in fear of death. Right? The physical process of dying as a human being is something that's a fact. But you as a being existing in another form is a fact, because your life. And I said, who are you? And he said, Max. I said, but who are you really? And he was like, life. And I said, and he said, well, how do I let go of this fear? And I said, well, self-forgiveness. And he said, okay, yes. And then he, on his own, goes, I forgive myself for allowing myself to participate in fear of death. Like, just, he says that, right? Huh. And you can kind of hear the shift in his tone, right? And then I said to him, you got to just understand, every time the fear comes, it might take time to walk through this fear. I said, but every time it comes up, you have to choose. Oh, because he said, well, he goes, I was listening to Bernard, and he was saying, when you die, you make a choice of whether you, or maybe, I don't know if he said he listened to Bernard, maybe it was something I had said to him. He said, you make the choice of whether you're going to continue, right? And he said, but how long does that take? And I said, it's a moment. It's a moment of that. And he's like, well, but like, what if I make a mistake? Right? And I said, well, you're not going to make a mistake. And I said, because it's just a moment of you being true with yourself. And I said, I said, if you chose right now, what would you choose? He said, life. And I was like, so that didn't take you any hesitation. He said, but sometimes my mind, it goes back and forth on things, and it's all crazy sometimes. And I said, right, but that's your mind. That's not going to make that choice with your mind. And I said, you to support yourself, every time your mind goes into fear, you make the choice of I'm life, I'm not participating, and that is the choice. So I mean, I can't give the whole context, right?
Just that point right there is so beautiful. Like, and not just like, oh wow, that's really beautiful that you're doing that. It's like, I can imagine if when I was a child, I remember having like experiences of like going back and forth between different states, but not being able to articulate that. I was not able to articulate that. And it seemed like it was just this thing that was going on within me that no one else, it really clearly explained to me. No one else supported me with. And so there was no practicing even of just like being aware of it and then choosing what's best.
Right.
And so that followed me for a lot of my life, where there's just like this a doubt will come in or a fear will come in, and it's like, oh, go to the fear, oh, back to the I'm confident, oh, back to the fear. And it's this dance essentially that we learn, or I learned as a child, that then has a lot of consequences as an adult, because then it's like, how focused can you actually be if you continue practicing or participating in that? And if you do that as a child, then how focused can you actually fucking be? Where it's like, oh, okay, I learned how to not just manage it, but like actually deal with this from the starting point of understanding what's going on, being able to really understand, being able to articulate that, being able to like, oh, okay, I see what I'm participating in. I'm going to stop. Like the actual being able to process and comprehend what that actually entails, what that means, stopping it and then doing it and going, okay, cool. So I've stopped participating in that. So now I can focus on and seeing every time it comes up, so that the practice just becomes like just as easy as walking for all of us, where it's just like, I'm not worried. I don't worry about getting out of my bed and walking anywhere and like, oh, I'm going to fall. I might fall. I'm not worried about that. But how many people are worried about like, but what if it doesn't work out? What if I'm not good enough? What if, like they still participate in that because they were not supported in the way that you're sharing how you've supported Max. And I know this isn't just in a moment last night, but has been over many years of this constant support. And look at where he's at right now, where he's like, oh, yes, I see what you're saying. That makes sense to me. I can do that. And he's practicing that. And of course, there's still going to be more time for him to practice, but fucking amazing, man. That's so cool.
But see, and the thing is like, I'm sharing this for everybody so they can learn from it and take it on and not just, it's like, what is the parent typically going to do? They're going to just
have to worry about dying. Like you go to heaven, grandma's
they're going to feel
there.
bad that their child feels bad. And then they're going to allow that to manipulate them to just, because I was talking with Katie about it and I'm like, and it's like, well, what else would I do? Anything else? What's interesting is doing what's best is not always fun and comfortable.
Yeah.
Like it's not fun to lay there and have to explain that. I don't mean like it's a burden. I just mean like, it's not like, oh, it's simple. I'll just tell them that because I'm telling them the truth. And the truth is not pleasant. It's like, well, you shouldn't be telling them that at that age. And it's like, well, here's the problem. It's not problem, but in the context of that, his vocabulary is really fucking high. He can already, it's kind of like if your child could understand algebra, if like they're at that level of understanding algebra and they're like asking you an algebra question and you're like, no, don't think about that. It's like they already can think it like that.
He literally said, what is the likelihood of him dying in his sleep? What 6-year-old is using that verbiage to describe his fear?
And then being able to go 0.000005.
Like there was even a point, it's interesting. There was a point where like I had a really bad headache. And so I don't do it often, but I'll take like an Advil or something. Cause like if I need to do bedtime with the kids and I have a headache, I can't sit there and just be like focusing on my headache. Right. And so I recently he was in the cabinet and he was looking at it and on there it says all of the side effects, the potential side effects, you know, like if you take too many, or if you have this problem, it can do this. And he was like, heart attacks. And he was like, Cameron, what are the likelihood of someone having a heart attack? And like, what is a heart attack like? What is a heart attack? And he was like looking at that going like, okay, we have these things, but it says there's a pot, it can cause heart attack or whatever it said, right? And he was
Yeah.
like, NSAIDs. And he goes, it says, okay, but not this type. He's like, do you have this type? He was like asking me about it, right? So it's like when your child asks questions like that, or let's just go back to the point about like death and all that. It's like, the problem is if you're going to tell them something based on hope, all you're doing is, it's like I can't really find a better phrase than saying you're dumbing them down.
I want to introduce this here because I remember having a conversation with a parent of, I think his kid was 5, and one of the kid's friends had died. And this parent was like, I don't know how to tell him that his friend is dead. And I don't want to describe death to him. I've just been telling him, you know, something bad has happened, and you know, we're not going to see his friend anymore. And I was like, oh, well, why don't you
What
just
state does that put in the child?
right? It's like,
What?
This, like-
Anxiety, fear, unknown, confusion.
Confusion, exactly.
Confusion,
Like,
yeah.
what? Like, it's like, so now you're going to have this very specific point as confusion. And that's what I mean by dumbing you down.
and so like I was asking this parent, I was like, why don't you just explain it to him? He's like, I don't want him to have to deal with death at this young age. I had to deal with death at a young age many times, and it was just too hard, and I don't want to do that to him. I want him to still be able to enjoy life. I'm like, so what's he going to understand? How are you going to explain this to him? He's just like, and he, you know, the guy was sincere, but he had tears in his eyes, and he was just like, I don't know what to say. I don't want to have to do this. And so it's like, what you're saying is like, it's not fun. It's not fun, like talking about this stuff, but what's the consequence of that going to be for his child? It's like you just said, his child's going to be confused. His child keeps asking him, and he's like, when he asks me, I'm not ready to explain it to him. And it's like, okay, that's the point of why you need to prepare as a parent now. Like parents think, oh, I'll just wait till they're of this age or that age or whatever. But it's like, if your child, you don't know how much you're holding your child back, how much you are dumbing your child down by doing that, because you're not prepared to do it now, because you're not prepared to walk that process.
Isn't
you know?
the purpose of being a child to prepare for adulthood?
Yeah.
But in our world, we believe it's supposed to be postponed until you become an adult, and then you become an adult, and everyone knows you're not prepared to be an adult.
In our world, it's almost like we're preparing children to be children forever.
Right.
Like there's this,
You still have a child's mentality, but now you're like, why can't I have fun anymore? And then you're just
Right.
angry about everything, and you're like,
Right.
what the fuck? Instead of it being like, why can't you just have all of those things? Like death is a fact. It's a fact. Let's just be honest about it. It is terrifying if you allow yourself to dwell on the idea of non-existence. You can go in that forever. And I was explaining to Max, I was like, I didn't really face these points until I was like 22. And I said, you're facing it early because you have a high vocabulary and you didn't have someone lie to you your whole life. And for me, I never had a belief in heaven or God or anything of those things, but I never faced the point. It was just like, oh, I'm too focused on, I got to go over here. I got to go to school. I got to do this. I got to go to college. It's like, you never even slow down to be like, because I got to do homework and I got to get up early and you know what I mean? Like you're never even slowing down. And then anything else, like I got to play video games and I just got, you're never slowing down and being like, what is life? What is reality? Like last night, one thing I really like to do with the kids that's fun and they enjoy and they get a lot of value out of is, because we don't watch movies, we don't watch TV, is I will describe to them like a book or a movie and I'll tell them the story. So they're getting the context of it. So they're aware of these things as they get older, but they're not being impulsed by the imagery and so forth. And I'll explain to them the patterns within it and so forth. So it's not, you're just getting it like, you're like hearing about it and so forth. Right. And like, And like, because I read a lot of science fiction, right? And we read a lot of science fiction together, but also like I'll read my own stuff that's like maybe not context appropriate yet for them, but I'll still describe stuff to them and explain it so that they're not being impulse by. Actually, I'll tell you a funny story real quick. This morning, Seneca was sitting on the couch. She had just woken up basically. And I was in there because Katie was milking the cow and I was with Caius, and then Max was in there. And Max was sitting over on another chair doing his techno tutor, I think. Seneca was on the couch and she was looking at this Philip K. Dick book, right? And it was our friends from Frolics 8. And I was joking around and I was like, because there's this really funny scene in one of his books where it's this robot and his name is Willis. And the people try to talk to him and he explains to them at the beginning, like, I'm here to serve you, but you have to say Willis before you give me a command. You have to say Willis, such and such, right? Go get me the glass or whatever, right? And so they forget because he's so human-like. They'll be like, hey, can you get me something? And he'll be like, you have to say Willis first, right? And so it's really funny because there's a certain point in the book where there's like this heated moment where they need him to do something. And they're like, go get that, whatever. And he's like, you have to say, screw it. And he just goes and does it. So it's just really funny point, right? So I was explaining all that to them about how silly it is and everything. And so we're always joking about it. Anyway, so this morning we were sitting on the couch and I go, are you reading about Willis? Like just joking around with Seneca. And she looks at it and she goes, no, this is Frolics 8. And I was like, what? Oh yeah, that's right. Willis is, I was like, oh yeah, that's the one about Glimmung. And Max is sitting over there. He goes, no, Willis and Glimmung are from the same book. And Seneca goes, Cameron, do you think I'm reading Galactic Pot Healer? Right? Remember, she's 4 years old. She like knows the Philip K. Dick novel that those characters are from and that she's reading this one. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, Frolics 8, that's the one. Oh, with that guy. And what is his name? And Max is going like, and I said, it's like Peroni or something. And then Max goes, no, it's, and then I still can't remember the name. And it's like some other name, but it's kind of like an Italian sounding name, right? And I was like, oh, that's right. Yes, that's right. And he goes, what was his first name? And I was like, Lars? Was it Lars Pravoni? Because Max goes, Pravoni. And I was like, Lars Pravoni? And Max goes, no, Lars, that's from whatever the other book, I can't remember the month. He knew the book that it was from. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's like, that's just from me describing stuff to them.
That's so cool.
I can tell you the characters of the Philip K. Dick books and which book. And like, it's like their ability to absorb and remember is next level, man.
Yeah. And then imagine, like, for most kids, that is filled up with just like cartoons, Pokemon, like fucking bullshit. Like, I remember shit from Yu-Gi-Oh from when I was a kid and Pokemon from when I was a kid that has no relevance to my life, but it's still in there, It's like,
see, you have these companies that know that, and they know that the parents don't have time, and then it's like marketed, and then the kids absorb it, and then it's just here's where I was going with it though. I was just giving that context because we talk about lots of stuff, right? So last night I was like, hey, we were having dinner and I was like, do you guys want to hear? Oh, because Seneca was asking me to tell a story. And I was like, how about I tell you about a movie that I saw that I think is really interesting that you guys would be interested in? They're like, what is it? I'm like, it's called The Matrix. Right. And they were like, okay. So I described to them the whole plot of The Matrix and like the context behind it and like the meaning of The Matrix and how and we were talking about how it applies to our world, but things are physically real. And we were talking about how people participate in all these points, and that's the Matrix and so forth, right? And then like later that night, I think we were going to feed the animals or the dogs or something. And I had talked to Max about the red and the blue pill, and he was like, he was like, we should just like make everyone take the red pill. And I was like, yes, but one of the things that was interesting in the Matrix, I said, is they talked about how they tried to just wake people up, just to do it, but like the people would die or something bad would happen or whatever, they couldn't handle it. I was like, they had to make the choice. And I said, so the pill is like the symbolic expression of them choosing to go down that path and wake up, even though they don't fully know what it is. I said, so we have to become very effective at explaining stuff to people and persuading and so forth, so they can make the choice themselves. We can't just force them. It's just not how it works. And so it was really cool because then later that night when we were talking, right, I was telling them, I was like, this point of your mind having fear and so forth, and you participating in it, your mind, that that is the Matrix, Max. That's the actual real Matrix. Like the movie part, the simulation they're participating in, that's your mind. It's there's elements where it can be supportive, just like we don't want to get rid of computer programs and simulations, and even things about like the metaverse and stuff can be cool, but it's about getting trapped in it and thinking that that's where real life is. And if people can't even understand how real life is now before the metaverse, and then you create an artificial world where you can be whatever you want, you see what I mean? Not realizing here is where you want to be. And so my whole starting point within explaining all this stuff to Max, like the points about death and everything, is so he can very early on understand, okay, how can I make the best use of my time here? Because if I'm under any illusions, I won't. Because if you're under an illusion that just getting dopamine is really the only thing is your purpose, you'll just play video games and watch porn all day. And how many men are trapped in that right now? Like adult men, like my age and older even.
Yeah. Or just making money too. A lot of people fall in that trap.
Right, just making money, and it just becomes that's their way of getting dopamine, right? And of course, we have a whole system designed so that we would rather have a lot more people playing video games than making money.
Yeah, of course.
So we have lots of traps you can fall into that play into your consumer / employee slave mindset, where you think you're making money, but all you're doing is just making money for the people who know what the fuck they're doing. And there's so many traps like that.
Yeah, it's interesting because like, just looking at those points, and also I want to close this point. The song that most people know from Jamiroquai is "Canned Heat." Yeah, that's the song that most people know. Especially our generation,
Okay.
especially our generation, because it's like Napoleon Hill. Everyone
Okay.
remembers that.
Okay.
Napoleon Hill,
Not Napoleon Hill, Napoleon
Dynamite. That's funny. Last generation was Napoleon Hill. That was like
Yeah,
you're cool.
That tells you
Now it's
everything you
like
need to know right there.
Yeah, every generation there's a Napoleon, right? There's Napoleon Bonaparte, then Napoleon Hill, now Napoleon Dynamite, and who
now one of
knows
these
what
TT
this-
kids is going to be.
I was
named
about to say
Napoleon.
that. Yeah, we need to get a Napoleon.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Drake, Christine, take notes.
All right, all right.
We already picked our names.
We already picked our name.
Oh, is it
Hey, we
Napoleon?
can add Napoleon in there. Why not? Why not?
No.
All right. Well,
No,
that's why
no.
not. It got vetoed by the wife. But it's crazy when you look at this whole what you were just describing, as far as like explaining the Matrix, explaining things to them in a way that, well, first off, your kids have this vocabulary where they can understand so much more. It's like, okay, the average person, they're not doing that. First of all, they're impulsing their kid with a bunch of bullshit. And then that stuff, there's literally just a layer. It's like we were reading in Heaven's Journey to Life about the platform from which you make all your decisions from in your mind, right? And it's like, this is being imprinted right onto that platform. And then you're going to make all your decisions based on, oh, wait, it's like this. It's like this. It's like you're giving your kid a toolbox, right? And they're going to have this toolbox for the rest of their lives, right? And so they get to put into this toolbox whatever they want as far as like tools that they're going to use later on to build either a car or a house or whatever they want to build. So they're going to have these tools in their toolbox. And then you just basically, you set your kid in front of a bunch of things that are not tools. You set them in front of like a bunch of just like squeaky toys, and they're like, oh, this looks like fun. Yeah. And I'm going to put this into my toolbox. But you don't tell them, listen, or you're not really clear on, hey, you only have a finite amount of space in this toolbox, and you really want these first tools that you have, you really want those to be the ones that you can rely on, you can use all the time, because they're going to be so useful. You're going to keep going back to those. And they're like, yeah, but squeaky toy, yeah, more squeaky toy, colorful,
And like
squeaky
consumerism, like shit that gets drop shipped from China and it just
Exactly.
breaks right away.
exactly.
It's like what-
And so, like,
Or it's got
that's
lead
what-
on it.
that's what their toolbox is full of. And then later on, you're like, yeah, so did you put a wrench in there? And they're like, you didn't fucking say anything about a wrench. What the fuck? And you're like, oh, that was like one of the first tools you should have put in there, a wrench and a hammer. There's no hammer in here or a wrench. But okay, well, we can just, here, I guess, since the main part of your toolbox is filled up, you could put it in one of these lower drawers or on the
Let me sign you
side.
up for a crypto wrench, where you can. It's like
Exactly.
not even give you like a real fucking wrench. It's just
Exactly. And so
it's
then, like,
oh, okay, you
it's in
have
the
to be, like,
metaverse.
black.
every time your kid wants to like access their toolbox, they're like,
They have
oh,
to
I gotta
sign
go
into
in.
their digital wallet, and then they have to,
They have
Exactly.
to like provide proof of vaccination.
Exactly.
That's what sure is in the toolbox, vaccines.
even the elite aren't preparing their kids with this. They still lie to them about God. They still lie to
Yeah.
them about what reality is. They're just giving them that access to that network that we were talking about earlier, and like the rules of that game and the vocabulary of that game. Like they have the vocabulary of etiquette,
Yes.
but they don't have the
Yep.
vocabulary of actually understanding how what life really is.
Right.
It's just the system only
So
as it is.
so this is so interesting because I remember from a young age, like one going through the whole thing that Max was going through, like going back and forth in my mind and thinking, well, when I die, am I really going to go to heaven? And I got to be a good boy and all this shit. And so like that tainted how I started to see the world. And then, but I still, in essence, like I started to see the idea of the network. I didn't have the word for it, but it was like I had this natural inclination within me. Maybe it was impulse, to who knows, but where I love to like befriend people. Like I like to make people laugh. I want, like when I was at school, I wanted to like just be like I used to lose my voice every day because in the lunchroom I was yelling to everybody like what game we should play. And I would come home from school and my mom would like scold me. She'd be like, stop, you need to stop yelling. And she would like force me to whisper at home. It was this interesting thing. But nonetheless, I had this like desire to be around people and like connect with people and stuff. And so that led me then when I grew up that I then figured out like, oh, go through university, try and get a job, all that stuff. Like if you know people, that's like how you can get in the door. I didn't really have the best like skills and vocabulary, but I knew how to work really hard and I knew how to just make people like me. So that helped me get to the point, this is the main point, where then I found y'all at a gin event. And that's when then it was like that red pill moment for me. Because I remember seeing The Matrix before that and I didn't understand really what was going on. But then we were hanging out and you guys explained to me like, this is what TechnoTutor is. I understood it enough. And that's when things really changed for me, because then I could start to see, I could actually build up that toolbox like we were talking about and see what the real network is. So now this is so fascinating because I've come to now really see that old school network that's run the show, and it still really is for the most part, the bankers and the politicians and the media and all that, whatever the names of the groups are, that is what's here. I can see it very clearly. I know people that are in groups like this, and I'm getting more effective at myself, and all of us in Self Perfected are getting closer to that central super hub. Now, if y'all are listening to this and this hasn't clicked yet, maybe this will make it click. Now imagine just a few years down the road when you got Max and Seneca and Caius and then Aristotle and all these other kids, as they start to see, it's like they're like standing on the shoulders of giants, as that saying goes, because what they're gonna be able to do with the network, as well as us, right? We're paving the way, but it's not like, oh, Max, please save the day, Max. It's like, let's look at now, how can we get ourselves into that best position? Because this is actually possible over the next 10, 20, 30 years, that we can actually infiltrate this current network. And we have our own network because it's built grassroots. It's that 1-to-1, and the power of 10. We're not out there doing billboards. We're
And
out.
it's
We're
based
not
on principle. So the people are in because they've, for lack of a better word, reprogrammed themselves according to the principles they want to adhere to. So it's not like a person has to tell everybody what to do. It's like each person is making the decision. People complain about this idea of groupthink, right? But the reason why they complain about it is because they think there's somebody telling everyone what to think.
Hmm.
No group can exist where everyone doesn't have the same vocabulary, the same goals, the same starting point, the same
Right.
basic understanding of things.
Right.
And again, it's one of those examples of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like, well, I don't like everybody being a group and having groupthink and doing stupid stuff. So I think we should just get rid of groupthink. And it's like, so you want everybody just to figure everything out on their own and they can think anything they want. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you agree with it. And you're going to have a group that actually has some kind of ability to move and influence things by that.
It's like, okay, it's just like looking at the school system, the Prussian school system, right? How it originated was because they were going into I guess battles, and everybody would do, like the whole army would do whatever they wanted to do, and think individually, and so they would lose the battles, and so they were like, okay, fuck, well, we have to do something.
You know what it
people will
was?
follow
It's like
our
that
commands.
classic idea where you see like the knights out there, you know, like a Braveheart kind of thing. The two armies just run at each other and they just start fighting each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus imagine the one who's like, all right, you send the troops that way. Okay, you go around this way. Okay, you guys attack that way. This other group one's gonna be like, what the fuck is happening? Right.
Right.
So they were totally able to start dominating because they created this discipline and order where they could move groups of people into like a formation and so forth and have strategy, right?
Exactly. And so it's interesting because you think like, oh, okay, well, yeah, well, I don't want to control people like that, so we can't have groupthink. But if you but actually consider it, what are all the elite doing? They're all at this World Economic Forum thinking the same way. Like, how are they having such influence over the world? It's fucking like,
It's
duh.
not thinking the same way that's bad. It's thinking the same way in a way that's not best.
Right.
But a person will go, well, you know what? It's a subtle point where I actually just don't want to stand up. I don't want to change. So I'm not a follower. So I'm going to be my own person and be independent. And then what do? They just go right back to following something else, and they just aren't self-honest about it. And they've deluded themselves into thinking they're not. And it's like, all you're doing is just going back into that group. Like you're going to be a part of a group. It's like, imagine if the cells in your body were like, we each want to think our own way. It's like, that's not going to work. It's just, you want them to all work together in the best way.
Yeah. It's
That's
like,
how cancer is created.
that is how cancer is created.
And then it grows and grows and it tries to,
I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to get my own followers, and fuck this body.
Independent woman cancer.
Exactly. It was also making me think of, fuck, now I had that image of cancer as a strong, independent woman. And I can't remember what I was going to say. Hang on, it's there. Okay. This point of like the groupthink. Yes. I'll fucking remember it later. What I wanted to say was something along the lines of like, if you have this groupthink or you're like trying to like avoid groupthink, then you're not going to be able to accomplish much of anything, right? But also like this point of like, okay, yeah, that's what the elite are doing. You don't want to be like the elite, but you do want to be elite in some way. You want to have this, like, we're all participating in a groupthink of some sort where the groupthink is survival. We're all already participating in that. So it's like, we're choosing something different. We're choosing something that's like, we're choosing life. We're choosing to stop participating in that, which is challenging because everyone else has bought into it so much, but we're making a different decision. And here's the main point. It's like the Matrix, what you were bringing up as far as taking that red pill. It's like, I can't make you take that red pill. And so, yes, there's a group think, so to speak, of, hey, everyone, this is how we can actually create and live life here on this planet. We can actually live life and not just participate in the mind, not just participate in the system. But it's up to you to say, I want to be a part of it, because you'll end up going, well, no, I'm not ready. I'm going to go back. I don't want to participate in groupthink. That's just you saying, I don't want to take the red pill. I'm not ready to wake up. I don't want to do this.
Like, I told you, you already took it. You can't go back. So I told you.
Then they go make a deal with the devil, like that one dude in the Matrix
With
makes the
Cypher.
deal.
What
Yeah.
they just
Yeah.
said. Exactly.
Because he was like, oh, I don't care if the steak is real. It tastes so good.
Right.
It's like-
It's like-
Okay.
I don't care if what I'm doing to make money is like systematically abusing humans, you know.
And people
It just
do that.
feels so good to have money.
People do that, right? It's like they are aware of, okay, I could do something different, but they are making a decision to, like we were saying before, like, you know, you waffle back and forth with these emotions. You're making the decision to just go with like what's easy for you.
Do you guys remember this audio from Bernard where he says something like, or maybe it's just a quote or something where he says, you know, self-forgiveness doesn't change consequences, it prepares you to deal with them.
Mm.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you look at the point with Cypher, right, he had not changed his starting point.
Mhm.
So he had not done the forgiveness for himself of like, okay, I'm letting go of all those desires because I'm here to change things.
Mm.
And so if you
That's
go
huge.
into it but the point is, it's like the reality we're in and the situation and the complexity of changing the system is fucking vast, and it's very difficult and it's very challenging, and it's not going to be fun. And there's going to be so many points. I mean, look, it's like, how do you help somebody realize, okay, you don't want to participate in what we're doing, you don't want to be a part of it, okay, but then you're going to have to go back to a world where the self-interest mentality of these networks, like we were talking about, are going to force you to get the vaccine, are going to force you to not have a business they're going to force you to accept, you know, when your child gets brainwashed by some transgender thing, that you have to go along with it. Otherwise, there's going to be some point where you're going to be the Kyrie Irving going, you know what, I want to say this. And then you find out, oh, fuck, I shouldn't have said that. Or, oh, I know I can't say that. Or I'm not supposed to say that. And then like, you're just literally going to realize, oh, I just accepted slavery. And I just guaranteed it for my children and and future generations. And it's like, how are you going to stand in front of your children at any point and have any authority in raising them? Because you're going to say, well, given the point of actually standing up and doing what's best, I'm not going to do it. Are you just going to lie and be like, well, no, I mean, I am doing it because eventually I'm good. But you'd have to dumb them down to not go, because think about it, with my kids, they can watch that video we were talking about and go, well, but you know, you can't just become rich through the system, because
Right.
you get rich through the system by these relationships based on compromise and by playing on these rules. The moment you break the rules, the system says, bye-bye. Look at Kanye West. They've
Right.
taken everything from him because they're like, you broke the etiquette. You weren't supposed to expose that Jewish people are constantly victim shaming themselves and everyone else. That's how they have power as that
Yeah.
particular group. You're not allowed to point that out. That's one of our unspoken rules. Okay.
Yeah.
We're all on board with, we're allowed to do that to white people. So blacks are victims, Jews are victims. There's certain peoples who are allowed to be victims, and that will give us power. And as a group, we can use that, but no one else is allowed to. Okay. So,
Also,
but I thought it was about, you're being hypocritical. You can't, but you are attacking this race. Okay. You're not supposed to point that out either. Okay. Another one you broke. You weren't supposed to point that out. That was one of the rules. You're out. You see, like, yes,
Yeah.
it's like going, it's, if you've read 1984, O'Brien. Well, maybe I shouldn't spoil it, but if you haven't read this fucking point, Jesus. It's like, whoa, 1984 there's a book. Oh, interesting. Like, Jesus Christ, read the fucking book, man. It's like a man, but in it, remember, he says, like, I don't remember the exact quote or anything, but O'Brien, who's like the inner party guy, who's like who's like basically trying to handle Winston Smith, right? He's like saying to him, like, I know it's bullshit. I'm paraphrasing, but I also convinced myself it's not bullshit while simultaneously knowing it's bullshit, because I'm here to have power, because simultaneously I'm lying to myself that this is in the best interest of everybody.
right.
Like, I know I'm tricking myself,
Right.
but I also know I'm not.
Right.
You want to join the club or not? Now, the one rule is you don't point it out. You don't talk about it. That's the point. You don't expose it. The moment you start exposing real shit, that's when you see people start getting taken down.
Right. It's exactly right. It's
So
like-
everyone has that fear because they never face the fear like Max is doing at a young age of like fear of death.
I was
Because you're
gonna
like, well, if I just don't stand up, I won't die. You're gonna die.
everyone's gonna die. I was gonna bring up this point of like, well, I don't have to do it because you're going to do it. You and you and you and you're going to do it. And so I don't have to do it. I'll just live my own life, and then you'll make life better for all of us, right? It's like, no, because if you think about it, okay, you go back into the matrix, what happens? You go back into the matrix, and then you have to come out of the matrix to actually live in the real world. And so everyone who's stuck in the matrix, who's not willing to come out, they're fucked. They're actually fucked. Because then, like, think about it. When Neo comes out of the matrix, he's got to learn to walk again. He's got to, and that's the point of, like, you got to do, I can't read anything of what you're saying. You got to do, like,
I'm trying to distract Drake with jokes in the chat window for everybody.
I can't read it.
I'm just helping you.
But you have to do the process of what you were saying, of like the actual self-forgiveness, of letting go of the desire to be in your mind, because otherwise you're still not going to be here living life. Even when we do make this life better for everyone else, you still have to make the choice to be a part of life and not be in your mind. Because if you just participate in your mind, you're going to fuck it up. You're going to find ways to fuck it up for yourself.
And the thing is, the reason all the points where a person would resist or start and stop is just continuing to participate in the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
and
all
wanting
it
to be
is.
almost like a special boy, you know, like, oh, I don't want to be now associated with the group think. Because it's funny, it's like, well, why would even someone like Kanye and like Kyrie Irving like speak up? It's like, to some level though, they do feel like, I'm the special boy, so I have all this power because I've now made it in the system. But it's like, you went along with the groupthink for so long.
They are
And now
finding
you-
out you're not that special, actually.
Right, exactly.
You had a
it's like,
pre-programmed
why-
design. It's not you. And you fit
Right.
into the system. And if you had used your pre-programmed design and not fit into the system, you would have never been famous. No one would have cared. Like, how many people are actually just as talented as Kanye West?
I don't know.
Probably a lot.
Drake doesn't
don't
want to
know.
admit that could
I
be
don't-
possible.
Listen. Kanye West is very talented. So I don't see many other people as talented as that.
No, you can't, because you
Exactly.
don't see them.
Exactly.
It's not because it's not possible. It's because
I'm
you
not
don't
saying
see
it's
them.
impossible. I'm just saying I don't see them.
Right. But you can't see them because it is more than possible. Right. Think about this. I was thinking about this the other day. Because I like to discover like new music that pushes boundaries and things like that. And I'm like, what if there was like this really amazing music that was like the best, literally the best possible music. And it was like the person literally cared zero about commercial success, and they were just doing it from the perspective of just making it. And they like recorded it all, but they never released it to anybody. And it just got buried, and no one will ever hear it.
Hmm.
Would
That's-
that be a tragedy?
Would that be a tragedy? I
Would
don't
it?
know.
Well, if
I
no
think
one
it'd be
knew
a
about it.
tragedy because that was like that person's life was invested into that. And what the
Just-
fuck happened from it?
But
Nothing.
no one knows about it. So you can't have a fear of loss about something you don't know about, and it's hypothetical.
It's a tragedy for that person.
That's like
Right.
the philosophical question, like, did anyone actually hear the tree fall if no one was around?
Did anyone hear the music that this hypothetical?
Well, actually, they
did?
say if it falls in the forest, no one's there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Yes, it does make a sound.
Which is like, you didn't even
It's a
think
really-
about it. Because if you
it's a
ask
really
the question, you
silly
didn't even
question.
think, the fact that it's still a question, it's like, you didn't even fucking think for like 2 minutes, of course. Like, why
You
would
don't have to think for 2 minutes. You just like, it's like the sound exists if I don't hear it. Yeah.
Right. But
Okay.
but the fact that question exists just shows how fuck people are in their minds.
Right.
If they actually think it wouldn't exist. Like reality exists. Reality stops existing when you die.
Yeah.
It's the other fucking way around.
Yeah. It's also okay. So what was the point that you were saying? Oh, the music. Okay. Yeah. If somebody makes some like really beautiful music or whatever, and no one ever hears it, there's a story that's like that. There's like the MGMT guys, right? They started, well, actually, this is like virtually every artist. This happens to
I don't
virtually
know.
every
Didn't they get
artist.
into hard drugs? Their music went downhill fast.
Okay,
But hear me
see,
out. Hear me out. What if there was a person who was as talented as Kanye, but had no ability to make it known?
Mm.
Why couldn't that person exist? That just also wasn't good at connecting with people. They could be literally on their computer making beats right now and not even uploading it to SoundCloud.
Yeah,
and they're
that's
just
true.
too afraid because they're so afraid of like judgment or something, but they're like really fucking good. I mean,
Yeah.
why isn't that possible?
No,
Like,
it's
how did
possible.
Kanye get good?
A lot of, well, making beats and then
Listening to stuff, like practicing, you know,
Yeah.
like, and I mean, he's just has a specific talent, but like, why can't someone else have that exact talent, but just lack the ability to promote themselves or make the connections or any of that kind of stuff? You see what I mean? And it's difficult to try to remove the point. But my point is, can you imagine a person theoretically who is just as talented at that particular point, where like if they made music, you'd be like, this is amazing,
sure,
but
yeah.
lacks the vocabulary in every area for you to even know about it.
Well, for sure.
And so he thinks he's special, but the reality is there's so many points where the system put him there where he's at. And now you're seeing, oh fuck, the system will just take that point away.
Yeah.
If the system had been able to detect in the beginning that he would do this, don't you think it would stop him from anyone ever hearing him?
Yeah, I'm sure the system would have selected
But maybe
somebody
that's already
else.
happened. Maybe that's already happened though. Maybe it's already happened that people were very talented, but there was a point within them where they would have actually stood up, because Kanye actually is playing into the hands of the system. Because think about it. Now, what is he getting all these people to focus on? Like Black Israelites and like this, and like we're the real Jews, and like who's the biggest Jew, and like all this stuff. And it's like, is this really what is relevant? Because Kanye West might be sitting here going, oh, this particular group is in power and controlling us. But you know what he's not questioning? The
Money
fucking
system.
value of that entire system to begin with.
Yeah.
Why is music as a commercial enterprise valuable? Because it's this idea of like, because remember you saw the one with Russell Simmons?
Yeah.
Where he was like, basically like, you know, I disagree with Kanye in a certain sense, but he was like, the Jewish community has been very good to the Black community by putting us in positions where we can, you know, basically be at the forefront of music, be at the forefront of fashion and different things, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's so interesting because there's still this group think mentality about it. Let me ask you a question. How many Black children are growing up in fatherless homes, in poverty, and they're totally fucked for their whole life?
At least 72%.
So how has there been any progress whatsoever in that community? Just because people like Kanye West have made a lot of money, or Russell Simmons, because he was the first Black producer on a Hollywood movie or whatever, you know, whatever the point was, right?
Yeah.
Because he was on Nutty Professor as a producer. And it's like, okay, but what about all the Black boys right now that are being fucking manipulated into being trans right now? Like, and I'm not just singling out Blacks. It's like everybody, obviously. But my point is to sit here and go, but look, we have all these opportunities. And it's like, you're not even fucking questioning the system at all.
So
At all.
I want to bring up that point because you mentioned Black trans boys, and we watched a video, Christine and I, of basically Dwayne Wade's
That's
son.
some crazy shit.
Right? Like, okay, this guy is a like prominent basketball player, like has a son who is now identifying as a trans woman. And we were watching Officer Tatum.
Oh, I love that one, dude. He's
You
like,
watched it?
he's like, yeah, you want to pretend like you're a beautiful woman right now. He's like, when homeboy turned 18, his back's gonna be like this. He's like, his dangly leg's gonna be hanging out his pant leg. It was so funny the way he's like, when homeboy turned 18,
It was so hilarious because he's like his hands gonna be this big.
Yeah.
He gonna be 6'6" in the club with all the other girls talking about, am I pretty? And
I was like,
with a voice,
the reality of it, right?
It's
I'm
his
dad is this fucking
dingling
douchebag.
gonna be out his skirt, like, and he gonna have that conversation with every guy who talks to. Hey, so before we get too far, before you put your hands up in there, you know, I just gotta let you know what's going on. I was born different. Like, but it was the point that he was making was like, you're abusing this child right now by telling them, like, you're confusing them about what's going to be their future. Like, genetically, you know what the outcome is going to be. You can't just say, oh, because in your mind you think that you're this or you're that, because you think you're a girl, that makes you a girl. No, that genetically what's going to happen. And then it's like, that's actually abuse. It's really clear. If you think about it logically, like, how happy is he going to be as a woman in that situation when no one's going to like actually be interested in him? They're going to be interested in the fetish. They're going to be interested in like the weirdness of it, right? But
See you, Mitch.
see, Mitch. But the reality is like, it's not going to be this point where he's never going to be able to have children, not as a woman, you know? And it's just really like,
Well, but Dylan, what's his face, said he could be a mother. Remember?
Oh, yeah,
Dylan-
Mulvaney.
Mulvaney.
Dylan
There
Mulvaney.
it is.
I keep thinking it's not Mulvaney because that's like a name of a comedian, but it is Dylan Mulvaney. Yeah.
So
It's
somebody
a different Mulvaney. Yeah.
So somebody also made a video about that where it was just, it was Ben Shapiro made a video where it was Caitlyn Jenner apparently made a tweet about Dylan saying he wants his bulge to be seen by the public because that's something that he said. It was just like, we should
That's-
normalize like instead of me having to tuck my balls into my skirt and up my like paint and everything, which is really uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. We should normalize women having a bulge. It's okay. I'm just going to walk around with my, you're going to see me in a skirt and a bulge. And
Why don't you just normalize being literally just a normal man and just say you're a girl? Like, why do you need to dress in a dress then? Like the logic makes no fucking sense. Right. Just normalize wearing normal clothes then. And normalize not having a wig and normalize not wearing makeup. Just normalize that and just say you're a girl. Fine.
So Caitlyn Jenner, who is also a trans woman, was like, he's talking about showing his bulge to women and children in public, right? Just normalizing, like, this is abuse is basically, I'm paraphrasing, but that's like Caitlyn Jenner was saying, which is
Caitlyn Jenner
hilarious.
at least had the balls to cut him off.
Right? It's hilarious because Dylan was like, I have different views than you, Caitlyn, but I was willing to, up until a few weeks ago, I was willing to sit with you and have a conversation with you because, just as a trans woman, I respect you as a trans woman, but you called me a he? Which is like,
oh, he said he?
Yeah.
That's amazing. The poster woman for trans women.
Yeah.
Or I say poster man. The poster boy for trans women is calling another trans woman a he.
He's like, you called me a he? And then like, and that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was like, you're making it seem like I'm abusing people because I want to show them my bulge. It's like, but that is what you're doing. Like
Jordan Peterson would be like, well, it depends on the meaning of what and the meaning of is, and it depends on what the meaning of bulge is, and also the word is that I just used is, and also the word word. What is the meaning of the word word?
You sound like Bill Clinton right now.
Yeah, I lost that.
I did not
like the original guy
sexual...
calling out all the trans stuff.
Right. But it's really funny to see just how it's cannibalistic in a sense, where it's just like, okay, this whole point that I was saying, as far as the network gets so skewed that it becomes this separation. And it's something that we've actually been participating in our entire lives as humanity. We've been participating in this separation from all of life. What do you got?
Can you imagine like these, like those videos, old videos from like the 20s or whatever, like the women marching for like voting rights and all this stuff? And you just chose that with like Caitlyn Jenner and like Dylan Mulvaney like arguing with each other about whether they should be able to show their dick and balls to other people.
Right? Right?
Like,
okay.
Then you have like George Bush in the background with a banner that says mission accomplished, right?
Women's rights.
But that's essentially like, okay, we've been on this path for so long as humanity, since the beginning of just separation, constant separation. There's like this constant thought, think about it in your own mind, of there's got to be more, and wanting more and more and more. And like we usually say that's greed of the elite. They're so greedy, they're just after more profits and more of this. But it's literally what everyone is participating in, this idea that you're more than life, but not even being equal to life, not even being able to consider all of life and thinking that you're a separate point from all of life. And because of this, you have to go into more, it's like watching porn. You have to go into more depraved parts of your mind in order to get that same amount of energy back. And so for the ladies who are listening to this, when guys watch porn, they start off watching like, or not even looking at people having sex. It's just boobs. Oh my gosh. And then it gets to like, all of a sudden,
It's a naked lady.
right, a few weeks down the road, it's like, oh, she's not choking on her own, like, I don't know, bodily fluids.
Her own dick.
On her own dick. It doesn't get me hard. That's where guys go when they're like down that path. You have to go further and further.
Hold
It's
on.
just like,
You know that point you're making about, or they made in the video about how when the systems, when a person is in the system, it gets to a point where they start deregulating things to make it to their advantage.
yes.
Or like, for example, where like the whole thing with the mortgage crisis, right? It was because like they were trying to make that whole system work for them. So they started selling these derivatives and they have to change the regulations and all, just whatever, just an example, right?
Right.
But like, if you look at it in a philosophical sense or a sociological sense, like the sort of, what they call postmodern or Marxist point, that has become critical race theory and trans ideology and all this stuff. It's like deregulated the point to the degree where it's like, okay, first it was just only men can have the right to vote. And we need to change that so that women can have the right to vote, right? To the point where it's become this like total free for all of you could be anything you want to imagine. And now you suddenly have rights to just change anything you want to be that thing. And it's like literally the thing that ties all these points together is the mind. And it's just going haywire. It's just like, I'm running the show. I'm going to make as much conflict, as much weird shit, as much just whatever, so that people are never, ever getting close to who they really are and stabilizing themselves and actually directing things in a way that's best, because that would mean that the mind is not in control anymore. And the system just constant energy buildup and so forth. And isn't it funny? Because it's like she said, it's not an abstract point, it's just people, right?
Right.
But we've abdicated ourselves to systems.
Yeah.
And even within ourselves, our mind, we've abdicated ourselves
Exactly.
to a fucking matrix, a computer program that is our mind, as if it, and then going like, but it feels good, thinking that's us. And it's like literally a program like, this feels good. I would do that if I were you. And you're like, oh yeah, okay. And the computer programming is like, thank you for the energy. Haha,
Yeah.
got you again. And you're like,
Yeah.
what? It's like even the point with what you should tell your kids about someone dying. Well, I don't want them to feel bad. See, there's this feeling inside of you. This computer program's like, you would feel bad if you told them that. Tell them a lie. Just do it. You'll feel good. You're like, yeah, okay, yeah. And like, you didn't even think it through. It's like the whole thing about the tree falling in the forest. You're like, does it make a sound? I don't know. Anyways, moving on. And you're like,
Right.
just think, just go one step further. What's
Right.
the consequence? Think, just keep going. Don't stop. It's like, no, it feels good. Yep.
It's crazy to think about it in the terms of like, it's crazy, but it's actual factual. I like that. But if you think about the mind or the matrix, what does Morpheus say? You're a battery in this matrix, right? And we are essentially acting as batteries for our mind, right? And if you think about it in the terms of, okay, watching the movie The Matrix, if that system all of a sudden needed an uptick in energy, what would it do? Okay, let's get these hearts accelerated.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's put in an image so that the heart will just start accelerating,
Yeah.
so we can get this big rush of energy, so we can use that to do whatever the matrix system wants to do, right? That's what we constantly are allowing within ourselves, where it's just this energy of, this would make me feel good. It's your mind going, we need that boost. Come on, give it to us. Boom. Or, oh, this is scary. Oh, a shot of adrenaline here. Boom. Yeah. That's going to give us this energy boost that we need, etc. And what's even further, taking that energy from the adrenaline to get you to submit to the mind even further. Right? Where most of the time when you feel this fear or adrenaline, it's your mind saying, no, you're not going to fucking do that. You're not going to stand up in that way. You're going to sit your ass back down and we're gonna take this energy from you
That's
too.
like the Kyrie Irving thing. That's the
Yes.
Kanye thing.
Yeah.
They're gonna take the energy and they're gonna tell everybody to sit back down. And they're also they're using it to identify who are all the people who agree with him.
Right.
Imagine all
Yeah.
the people making videos going like, yeah, Kanye's right about those people. And and it's like, oh, gotcha.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's like the thing with Q.
Oh yeah.
It's like there's a file somewhere in the CIA that says retards. And it's like a list of all the people who like posted Q memes.
Just a big folder. It's just like
I guarantee
uh,
there's still people sitting there, like those Japanese guys who like were on the island in World War II and they told them like, don't give up, don't give in to the enemy no matter what, never surrender.
oh, that's
And
right.
they hold themselves up, like, and they were like surviving for like 30 years and they had to
Yeah.
sometimes send commanders,
Yeah.
their original commanders who were like some old dude with a cane, like to go back and be like, stand down, soldier, the war's over,
Yeah.
and like, it's like, oh yeah, there's still people right now who are like, yeah, Trump's going to overturn the election and they're going to do, order 75 and they're going to remove Biden and Trump's going to become president and Obama's going to be in prison. And you're like, holy fuck, dude.
I
We're
was
gonna
going
drain the
over to
swamp.
It's
I was
time to
going
move
over
on. Yeah, he's going to drain that
people's
swamp.
homes. I was going over to people's homes where they were still like years after, I guess it's been years now, but like they were still talking about it. Like I still have hope. I'm like, that is not going to happen. It's been a year. It's been 2 years. It's done. It's not
And it's like,
happening.
I can't understand how people could buy into something like that. Well, I want to talk more, but I got to go to church right now. And you're like,
Right. Right.
sorry,
It-
Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and he will come again, and I will be perfect in heaven. You're like,
Okay.
that's like the original QAnon conspiracy.
You
No
wanna-
wonder Christians fell for it, like left and right. It's like, they were already prepped for it from the beginning.
It's the evolution. Oh yeah. This is cute. Sounds great. Okay. Here's
It's a letter of the alphabet we haven't used before. Okay.
here's something that I was just considering. You know how you were just saying like there's these people, they've been hiding away for like 30 years, they're still holding on to this thing. That's the same point as like people who are there's a little horn. Did you just
About a train.
fart? Is that your okay.
About a train. I want to hear that the next part go. Dun, 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 dun. You remember that song? Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun,
Dun,
dun.
dun, 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 dun. Yeah.
And then there's that old guy who's dancing to it.
That's
For
the
Six
Six Flags commercial. Yeah,
That's
I
right.
remember that.
That's it. Yeah. Okay. Here's the point that I was going to make. You know, the longest someone's ever been in a coma and woken up from it? 29 years. That's a long fucking time. If you think about it, when somebody goes into a coma, like it's sad for what reason? It's sad. You know why I've been thinking about this? Because I've been reading this Otherland book, right? And there's some kids in comas. And
like I haven't already told the whole fucking story on here.
right. But like family members of kids in comas are like talking about how it would just be so much easier if they were dead. It would be so much easier if they were dead, because then you would know, okay, it's done. Like, what the outcome is, right? Versus holding on to this hope that they may wake up or they may not wake up. It's this uncertainty, right? And in the same vein, like, of course, if they woke up, that would be the best thing, of course.
Has
right?
anyone ever, do you know of anyone who was a child when they went to a coma and woke up as an adult?
That'd be crazy.
I'm sure that's probably pretty rare. But imagine they still talk like a kid and stuff. That would be
That'd
really
be-
weird. I
that'd be
wonder if
really
I'm sure that, I don't know, maybe this exists. I don't know.
I'm gonna look that up later.
Yeah.
Kind
Kind of reminds me of
But-
like feral children sort of a thing or something,
of, right? Like your brain would be like done growing, and so
But that's actually literally what happens when people like take the actual red pill. It's like you realize like, oh, I'm still a child the way I think.
right.
I just sound like an adult, but it's like you're just a child.
right.
The only
Um,
reason you sound like an adult, you don't want to know why?
You have different vocabulary.
No. It's because you have bigger vocal cords and a bigger body. I'm not trying to be silly. Like that's
Yeah,
why
that's
you
true.
sound
Yeah,
like an
like
adult.
it's
You
yeah,
actually
yeah.
think like a child.
Yeah,
An
that's true.
immature, dumb child.
I'm not that dumb. I can hear myself. I'm not like those trees in the forest. I make sounds. I'm not dumb.
Okay.
That was a vocabulary joke. Okay. Anyway, but okay, this point of the coma, right? It's like so many people actually have these aspirations, dreams, goals, whatever. This idea of how they're going to be when they get there, right? But they keep going back and forth, like we were talking about earlier, between like, oh, that's what I want, but then I'm afraid and fear. And like, okay, just to make that point really clear, the fear is really, that is death, essentially. The fact that you're fearing death, right? It's like, but what are you participating in? You're actually making it so that you're not willing to live life and express and just be here. You're taking parts away from you and moving towards death. And the reason why I'm saying it that way is because when somebody has this understanding of, okay, like in our group, we have a purpose. The purpose is to create a world that's best for all. And we know where we're going, and we know that it's going to take work, and we know that it's going to take time. But if you're still participating in this back and forth of I'm afraid, or I have to like worry about my own survival, and I'm going to go participate in the system, and then I'll come back, as opposed to standing equal to the system, which means like, oh, I'm not just completely separate from the system, but being equal to the system and doing what is best, then you're basically participating in this coma. You're not awake yet. You're not alive yet. You're still sleeping. And it's sad because there's no promise that you're ever going to wake up.
Yeah.
Just because you saw it at one point doesn't mean that you are actually awake. It's like somebody was saying, Owen Benjamin was saying this about Russell Brand. And we talked about it, I think, on the podcast before, about how it's this pressure release valve where people will enjoy watching what he says or what he's saying because it's the truth. And it's like, oh, somebody's talking about it. Yes, I can see it. He sees it. Other people see it. But it's like, okay, but just because you saw it does not equal you're doing something about it. Just because
you go right back to shopping at Walmart and investing in the stock market and doing your job and like going to church and watching TV and like, what are you going to fucking do that's any different? That's going to change anything. Another point. Yeah. Well, another point I was going to say is that. Go ahead. Okay, you go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyways,
then you go ahead, and then we'll go ahead, and then we'll all go ahead together. Okay. Go ahead.
Well, now you have to go ahead because I don't even remember what I was going to
say. But I was going to say, somebody was trying to sell me on investing in some stocks, and it was so funny because like we literally just had a conversation about it this week. Where you were sharing about some folks who were invested in stocks, and they're trying to get
retirement and stuff. Yeah.
Right. And they're like, well, how can we ensure our future? Because that's not going to take care of it. They realized that.
They were starting to realize that.
Yeah. And so it's funny because somebody was like trying to sell me on that. And I'm like, listen, I'm not putting my hope in stocks. I don't care about retirement. Like,
right. It's like, so I can live off of what? Like that's not.
And do what? Do what? Like
that amount of money will be meaningless.
Right. And right. And I also understand that in order to actually get to the point, like when you're old, you're going to need some assistance potentially, right? But why wouldn't I actually do my best to, first off, create a world that's best? Second off, raise my kids with these principles, and the principles being the principles of doing what is best, doing what's best for all, right? Self-responsibility, self-honesty, like giving unto others what you want done unto you, like doing for others what you want done for you, like actually being able to consider the 13 principles. If you haven't read them already, like, fuck, dude, like Go read the 13
They probably need
principles,
to read 1984 too while they're at it.
Exactly.
right? But okay, why wouldn't I first off be working to create a world that is that? Because if I'm just focused on stocks, I'm not even. I'm what I'm basically saying is I'm never going to get there. And I need something that's going to take care of me in my old age so I can just die having not accomplished anything, really. Right. So I'm
It's
going to
literally, how is it any different than fucking going to a casino?
I mean, it is.
At
Especially
least with the
especially-
casino, it's like, you know, you're not going to win. And it's like,
right.
you're just like a little bit more honest, actually.
Right. Like it's funny because today with the stocks, it's like, if you don't see how volatile all of that is, there's so much volatility in the markets and how manipulated it is and how it's like, bruh, you're not getting paid out any of that bullshit at all. At all. Like you are deluding yourself right now if your focus is on like a retirement fund where you can just set it and forget it. You are deluding yourself. Oh,
Also,
sorry.
all those companies are going to be going into the ESG and all that stuff.
Right.
Otherwise, it's not going to be able to be on there. So you want to participate in that. And so it just really comes down to like, all right, do you
And you're gonna be
care or
controlled.
not? Like, are you going to go based on principles? Or are you just going to be like, I don't care. It's just about me and my survival. And it's like you haven't even got to the point Max has gotten to, my 6-year-old, where it's like, oh, I'm actually going to die someday. Okay, so what should I do with my life? Like, how should I live? You're
Right.
still like, oh no, I just got to survive until I have a little bit of money to retire on. And then, and it's like, so then the last like 20 or 30 years of your life, you can just fucking like be feeble and like not have barely enough to live. Like versus the other person, like, I just want to get rich. And it's like, okay. And then you're going to do what? So you're gonna have to play that game. That's a whole nother game.
Yeah.
Like
It's
a
like-
whole nother game.
It's crazy because it seems so obvious. It seems so obvious to me. Hey, let's stop participating in that. Let's stop participating in that. And let's actually create a life that is best for all of us. A life that we'd actually enjoy, a life that we can be proud of, a life that we can leave our children and be proud of, not because we took advantage of other people and we were this terrible like system agent, but because we actually created a world that's better for everyone. And it's funny because I know a lot of people actually want that. I mean, who doesn't want that? But there are a lot of people who can see, yeah, this life that we have right now, or the way that we participate in life is bullshit. But then they just go into the spirituality. That's the disheartening thing about.
That's why it's there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Because
like a trap.
it collects all those people who can see, like we see, oh yes, things need to change. But instead of like,
But a lot of times they've only seen it because they've had some experience where it was really negative.
right,
And then they were like, oh, that's not fair. I'm not on the other side of
Right.
the system. And they really just want to be there.
right.
But they want to be there now. So they just participate in the energy of it and imagine that they're a millionaire in spirit. That's the reality of like what they're doing.
And I know Mitch was saying this earlier, but I just want to make it really clear because I don't know how clear it was, but just to like make it even more clear. If you're participating in, oh, I need to do the inner work and I'm just gonna stop communicating with people, isolate myself, and do this inner work so that you feel better. You're not participating as a node in this network. You're not fucking helping.
Right.
You're not doing anything.
It's not about just going in and becoming rich and then change the system. It's not about just doing inner work. It's about doing them both together with the starting point of changing the system and doing what's best. And then
right.
it's like saying, I'm going to work on myself as a parent. I'm not talking about with the process we're talking about. I mean, like, imagine a person that's like, or like in a relationship, I'm going to work on myself and then I'll get into a relationship. That's like saying, I'm going to work on, I mean, how can you do anything without doing it?
That's like,
There's like a certain level of preparation you can do, but what? Like, so how are you going to, you're going to sit down and actually face all the points you need to face? Is it possible to do that? It is possible. Well, look, it's possible. It's theoretically possible, but it's not practically possible.
it's like, okay, if you
realistically
learn,
possible.
You see what I'm saying? It's not practically possible. Like, okay, so are you going to have the discipline to do that? Because they're not, and they don't have the time for it. If you want to get better in a relationship, then when you're in a relationship and you start getting triggered, use that moment right there to be like, oh, here's what I need to change, and then change it. Don't go, oh yeah, I'm not ready for a relationship because all this shit come up. Let me go now work on myself. No, you just failed. You just gave up.
Right.
That was the time to do it right then when the pressure
Right.
was on. And then how are you going to even measure whether you actually changed? If you're not
is
in
no
the
measurement.
relationship, you're only going to have to go start one again and then probably fail at some other point. And then what are you going to stop and start? And you're just going to keep doing that until you're like 40 years old?
it's
That's
like,
literally the track of so many people though, especially women. Like I have like a few friends who are like so caught up in their like spiritual work, inner work, and their careers that it's like there's no even there's no time being invested into even looking for a partner because it's like they're also wrapped up in the spiritual thing of like, oh, that person will just come when I'm ready kind of thing. But it's like, first of all, you're also super masculine because you're like trying to build this like empire for yourself, right? Like having a business. And then you're not actually like putting yourself in the field to actually like then put yourself in a situation to even meet someone. So then it's just this excuse like, no, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. And then there's that statistics where it's like 45% of women will be single and childless in the next like, I don't know how many years.
by
Not even
2030. By 2030.
Yeah.
Like women
It's
over
like-
40 or something, or 30 or something like that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like because of this bullshit that people are being impulsed with of like, they've had a hard time in relationships, they've been traumatized, and women have just, taken the time now to really heal themselves. And then people will argue of like, well, that doesn't, being a mother and like being a homemaker, isn't what makes a woman, right? Like she can do other things too. It's like, okay, yeah. And if everyone thinks like that, how is anybody like, first of all, what is the point of healing your generational curses to begin with if it's just going to end with your lineage? You know what I mean? Like you're the last person in your family. And then at the same time it's like imagine if everyone thought like that, there would be no human race.
The problem also is the problem also is the language of the word healing. What do you need to be healed from?
Satan.
In itself, it's a projection of the responsibility outside of yourself. It's actually just blaming.
Yeah.
Right.
And
100%.
the biggest problem of why women are not effective in their relationships is because they blame the man. When they get triggered emotionally.
Yeah.
They blame him. Do you see? That's it. And they're like, oh, you made me feel bad. They don't take any responsibility for the point. And then they want to hide behind this point of, oh, they're more sensitive than men. Men are very sensitive too. The difference in the dynamic, now there's a lot of weak men, but the difference in the dynamic is don't blame the other person.
Yeah.
Take the responsibility. How can you do that if how are you working on yourself if the whole time you're working on yourself, you're literally still in a constant state of blame of all the other people that you were in a relationship with? Any of those women who say they want to work on themselves, I can already predict, okay, what was your last relationship like?
He was a
Well, I was
narcissist.
with really toxic narcissists and so forth. I'm like, okay, right. So that's why you're the problem.
It's so funny because then they'll go
They'll be
into
like,
the
no, he
blame.
was super abusive. I'm like, really? I'm like, yeah, he used to beat me so much, like I died 3 times. It's like, okay,
I
yeah,
did so much work, and then he just brought all the worst out of me, and I just had to break it off, and now I'm just gonna have to keep working on myself because clearly I'm still attracting the wrong man. It's like that's the pattern.
It's like, but also I want a bad boy.
You're too nice. It's funny because I was just looking at a few of those points. One, the point of okay, if you work on yourself, it's like reading all of the manuals before even starting with sorry, Mayor's calling me. I don't know why he's not watching the podcast. But
Maybe he is. Maybe he wants to be on.
maybe he wants to be on. That's it. But okay. So it's like having within you, I'm going to read all the manual before even starting woodworking, right? It's like if you try to learn all of woodworking before even starting with woodworking, you'd be fucked, because the moment you start
Yeah.
woodworking, you'd realize I fucking suck.
Also,
then-
you just won't have any content. You're not going to remember it. It wasn't
Yeah.
relevant in the context. And like when I started, I just watched videos on what basic tools do I need. But that was based on I have some particular project I want to create. And I was like, well, what do I need? And she was like, oh, I have this tool and this tool and this tool and this many nails. And I'm like, okay, let me go buy those things.
Right.
You know, and then it was like seeing like, okay, I need to do this. Oh, and I would have a problem doing something. And I'd be like, and I'd watch a video and I would realize like, oh, there's an easier way to do that. That's more accurate. Okay. And you learn, it's a continual process, but you wouldn't be able to learn it. And this is the difference between like the trade schools versus like the normal schools, like, you know, normal education system. In the trade
Yeah.
schools, you're actually just doing it and that's how you're learning it. So you actually
Yeah.
learn something practical versus normal schools. You like, like you have, you're 13 or 14 years old doing algebra problems on compound interest. And you're talking about CDs and, you know, and like stuff like that. And you're like, I
Stuff
don't even know what
you're-
the fuck that is.
You're never gonna understand it either.
And what's funny is, why do they even need to use that word problem?
because when
could,
you
like, just
become
take
an
something
adult,
specific. I know, but
Because-
it's like
but
they
when
just
you
want
go,
you programmed with those words early on. So later when they're like, oh yeah, you need to invest in this, you're like, oh yeah, I could never understand that. Okay, yeah, you do it for me.
exactly. Oh, I remember that word problem. I can't do that. You do it. Thanks. Okay. All right. Am I making money? Oh, you say I am. I believe you. It's like going to the cash register and they're like, okay, so you give me a 10 now. And you're like, okay, here's a 10. And like, okay, now I'm gonna give you 3 back. And then they give you like 1 back, and you're like, thank you. And they're like, bye. Bye
yeah,
now.
see you later.
Yeah.
You
like-
literally just described like the Federal Reserve.
That's it. That's it. But the other point was this point of like this idea of the law of attraction, like things are just going to come to you. You don't have to do anything for them. That would be something that somebody who's at or somebody who's close to the central nodes, the central network, right? The super hub, right? Someone who's in that position would tell to other people making their way to that position to just get on the outskirts, just go on the outside of this network, and things will come to you. It's like that's what somebody would say to reduce competition. It's like you don't have to make any sort of network. No, you don't have to network. No. People come to you. Don't worry about it. Just go
Right.
over there.
It's a very
Go.
feminine, like
Yeah.
because like we've talked about this before, I'm sure, but it's like with women, women are used to things coming to them. And I don't mean that like in a sense of entitlement. I just mean in the scheme of the physical reality. It's like flowers are used to bees going to the flowers. The flower doesn't have to go to the bee. But
Right.
how industrious does a bee have to be? Versus a flower, it can just bloom and be there.
Yeah.
Right. Does that mean I'm condemning flowers? No, it's just recognizing the physical relationship.
Right.
Right. The problem is you want to make honey. Okay, you want to make honey, you got to be like the bee. You want to make more flowers or more apple trees, you got to be like the flower.
Right.
But then you have the flower trying to be like the bee. And there's a level to which humans are very adaptable. And there's like women can do that. But the problem is they still have all of the drives that they had before, and those come in, and then it creates conflict within them because they never directed it. No one actually sat down and said, look, as a woman, you can literally do a lot of things, but like, let's look at the point of reproducing. Let's look at the point of having children and that whole process and why that's of value. And then let's look at how we can put that into the context of other things you want to do and create in this world, and look at how those can work together. You see what I mean? Instead, they're like, women, you can have it all. I heard someone said, you can have it all, just not all at the same time. Because the problem is you don't then the problem within it is you don't consider, well, what about the effect on the children?
Yeah.
So then you want to complain about this society that we have and how it's anti-woman, but all of the people in our society came out of women. And the moment that the woman let that person go out of their grasp and out of their direction, the woman has abdicated responsibility, because the man doesn't even like physically have to be present after the point of conception.
Right.
So who's the one who's responsible for what happens to that? Now, does that mean that the man shouldn't take any responsibility in the process? Obviously not. But who, it's like if I'm holding something in my hand and then I put it in your hand and you go throw it away and I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, how dare you? And it's like, why'd you give it to me? I told you I was going to throw it away. Even, you know what I mean? It's like, well, okay, you might throw it away, but, and it's like, it's like, if you hadn't just given it, now it doesn't mean you have to like hold on to the child forever and you have to control everything of your life, but you are primarily responsible then for the environment they grow up in, for the words that they hear, the emotions that are expressed, the direction of how they make decisions. And obviously it's best if there's the man and the woman together because you get that dynamic, but then the man also now has to be operating from what's best for the child and understanding his role within that and so forth. Is a very complicated point in a lot of ways, but it's also very simple. And then we're just taking all that and throwing it out and being like, women can do whatever they want. And, you know, like you should be able to have, it's like, I want to have freedom. So I'm going to go work as a corporate slave. And then, and then we like laugh at like, oh, you compare everything to 1984. And it's like, literally, you think slavery is freedom. You literally think slavery is freedom. How is that freedom?
Right.
Freedom is the ability to do what's best.
It's so funny. Like if you consider, I mean, it's not funny at all. But if you consider women are basically saying no, and men too, but people in general are basically saying they don't want to bring children into this world, or they don't want to have kids, and they're focused on themselves and their self-interest. And it's understandable to the degree that your parents obviously did not support you in the best way, right? But then you're also not considering you were given the opportunity for life. You were given life. It is.
Hold on, but isn't it ironic? They're saying, I don't want to bring kids in this world because it's fucked up, right?
Right.
But then they're like, but also I want to go participate in that world and just leave
But
it as
I
is.
also want to fuck it up.
So
Right.
you actually do want to be a part of it. And you're actually just saying you don't want to have kids because you don't want to take the responsibility. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Of it. It's
Yeah.
not, oh, that's just like, you can't question me because now I'm a good person, right? Because I care about my kid, these kids that don't even exist.
Yeah. And that's
like
a really
bullshit.
great point.
It's
That's a
total
salient
bullshit.
point.
Do you guys
Yeah.
want to wrap it up?
Yeah, let's wrap it up. But okay. But before we wrap it up, but don't be like that. Don't be like that lady or that guy or the guy ladies, the lady guys. Don't be like them. Don't be like the ladies who
Don't
think
show your
they are
bulge.
men. What's that?
Don't show your bulge.
Don't show your bulge. Don't show your bulge because it's gross. I mean,
We
well,
don't condone the bulge.
we don't
No one wants to see your
condone
fucking
the bulge.
bulge.
Nobody wants to see your bulge. Okay.
Hey, that would be funny, man, if they just people put that Twitter spat together in a video and call it Battle of the Bulge.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I like it.
Maybe
Yeah.
we should bring that to Matt Walsh. He'll make a special on it.
Wait, maybe that's the joke that Ben Shapiro was making. He was like, "Oh,
is
it's a battle. I don't want to say what kind of battle it is."
I didn't see that.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Damn
you
it.
were late to the party. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right. But anyway, hey, to wrap this up, if you listen to everything that we said here and it's not clear, you need to up your vocabulary because this was so fucking clear. This makes a lot of sense. And if you don't get it, you're, I don't want to just say you're dumb, but you definitely need to improve your vocabulary so you can understand what we're saying so that it can click for you so that you can actually live a better life, right?
Did you
It would
say
be
a butter life?
a better life.
Did sound like you said butter life. I
better
feel
life.
like right now you're gaslighting our audience. You're
Mhm.
victim blaming them
Mhm.
because you're just making it like it's their problem
Mm,
that they can't understand us.
yes.
Cool. Correct.
Yes, that is correct. It is their problem that they cannot understand.
Confirmed.
But the great thing is you can do something about that, you know? So
That's like
and
gaslighting is a
we're-
good thing. Like you're lighting something, you're eliminating something. That's what it is.
I have heard this phrase before, gaslighting. That is when you have the gas and you turn on the light and you let everybody know, I have the gas.
Right.
It is beautiful. So
Now you definitely don't have the laughing gas.
in conclusion, Come get the gas. And yeah, stop being in the matrix. Wake up from your coma. Wake up. Wake up. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Um,
Auf Wiedersehen.